Evening, Winchester.
Perfect. I have no problem.
As soon as everyone at the table here gets situated, we will begin. So this is the October 2nd, 2018 Winchester Planning Board meeting. And we have on our agenda this evening a public hearing to get public input on a number of warrant articles that the planning board may be proceeding with for this fall town meeting, which is coming up in November. That will start very shortly after I'm done here. We will then go on to do a few appointments to various commissions, some minutes approval, some updates on the construction happening in Elmwood Ave in the Center Business District. At 9:30, a planning board budget, an exciting thing, and I hope that you'll stick with us past the hearing because we have a lot of fun here. So,
It's an odd idea, fun, but fun nonetheless.
yes, some of us need to get out more often. Okay, so I believe we're going, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
And we need a roll call here. Roll call. Pardon?
I don't think that's supposed to be there, but anyway,
Every time I try to open a hearing by saying we open the hearing, someone tells me we need a roll call, so.
That's fine. I don't
So-
think it makes too much difference, honestly.
And so I'm,
That's fine. Aye.
Aye.
Heather Von Mering, aye.
Jerry says aye, Maureen says aye. Okay, so the hearing is open. So I'm going to turn it over to town planner Brian Skelly, who is going to, you're going to tell him how
I'm
the
gonna
hearing
go,
works?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, so we're gonna do, Brian will do a presentation on each of the articles, and at the end of each article, we're going to have time for public input on that article. And at that time, people who are interested in speaking, just raise your hand so we can know how much time we can allot for each of those articles. And when you make your comment, please come to the table. Give us your name and where you live or your association with the town. And please, if someone else has already made your point, please just say you agree with that point, but don't make it again so that everyone has a chance to speak. So,
Are we going to deliberate and finally make our vote?
yes, after the public hearing is closed, the planning board will vote on each article to vote to bring it forward to town meeting or not. And so,
All right, so I just have a few slides for each article. Like Dieb said, we'll open up to the floor after I'm finished with each article, you'll know when I'm finished. So, these are the 9 articles that we are potentially going to be introducing at town meeting. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to go through them because we're going to go through them individually. So the first one is the main objective of all of these proposed changes are either to clarify, simplify, or delete unnecessary language, such as housekeeping type of zoning changes. Others are to reflect current or potential future uses on specific property, and others deal with reviewing scale and design of new structures. So Article 8, this is a global change. The objective is to reflect the votes of the town regarding the name Select Board. No projects are addressed by this change. The town's code of bylaws were updated after the town voted to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. The planning board is now updating the zoning bylaw to reflect this change. 16 such occurrences are within the zoning bylaw that go from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. So that is it on. So that's it on Article 8. Are there any questions or comments regarding Article 8? Okay. No serious comments, I guess. Article 9, dormer regulations. So the objective here is to mitigate structures that make residential buildings appear to be 3 full stories. 3 full stories are not allowed for residential structures in all of the residential zones. Projects that are addressed by this change are additions or new constructions with dormers of a certain size. So what we're talking about here is adding two definitions to the zoning bylaw, the definition of dormer and the definition of skylight to make it clear where a skylight is located. There are other towns have experienced problems by saying that, no, there are actually windows on the roof, or they're skylights, they're not windows, so we want to make it very clear what's what. And then the actual language that would be put into Section 4 is in all of the residential districts, so that's RDA, RDB, RDC, and RG. In order to maintain the appearance of the top of the building as a half story, the total width of all dormers on a single roof plane, so each side of the roof, it can only take up 50% of the length of the roof. So you can have two dormers that take up 50% on each side, but you can't have any single dormer on either side that takes up longer, or even multiple dormers, but you can't have any dormers that take up more than 50% of the linear length along the roof. This last line here saying no other projections that increase habitable space above the second story shall be allowed. This has to do if someone is trying to say that it's not a dormer, it's something else, it's a different type of architectural structure that's not a dormer. So we want to make it clear that if you're increasing habitable space on the third floor, so this is always, it's the floor, it's above the second floor. So I want to make it clear if you have a single story house and you're trying to put a full dormer on that second story, you would be able to do that. This is just on the third story. This is kind of what we're talking about. That what we're seeing are these a lot of they're called shed dormers that kind of pop out rather than what you would think of as a doghouse dormer, or when you think of a dormer in your head, usually people think of the doghouse ones. This is the length of the entire structure. And it does appear like a full third floor. So I'll take a break here to see if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
And we will be giving everyone 3 minutes. So if you could identify yourself, please.
Anthony Conti, 80 Harvard Street, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. My precinct has had a number of reconstructions of old ratty buildings, frankly. I see this as an effort to discourage rehabilitation of outdated properties. I don't understand how this stops anybody from having a third floor. If you've got two dormers on the third level, and they're spread apart, there's a space in between them, how is that any different than, all you're doing is reducing the flexibility of the ability to rehabilitate old properties, which we've had some terrible old buildings in my area that have been beautifully spruced up. I think Liz Betsy rather, can attest to that, coming from Precinct 2. And doing this would reduce flexibility, really, and without, you say that it's to stop a third floor, but if you have two dormers on both sides and there's a separation in the middle, how is that any different? You know, it really doesn't strike me as achieving the alleged purpose, and but at the same time, it discourages rehabilitation of old properties. So I would oppose this. Hey, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, you want to come forward, please? And thank you for keeping that to 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name's John Miller.
Could you sit down so
Yeah,
you
thank
get
you.
right into the
Want everybody else to
microphone?
be able to hear you as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
what we've discovered is that the people on cable cannot understand people at this table unless they speak directly into the
Yeah,
microphone.
I'm a former rowing coach, so they used to hear me all across the Charles River, so I'm not worried about that.
I am though.
So, is my clock started?
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's John Miller. I live on Westland Avenue. I think, I agree with Tony. I think there's another reason I think that supports what Tony Conti just said. By reducing flexibility, in the end, you're kind of making, this is kind of a schizophrenic policy with respect to the demolition bylaw. So what you do is, if you end up making it less flexible for people to renew and rehabilitate their house, you're actually encouraging people to say, hey, look, the land's more valuable. I'm not going to rehabilitate my own house, it's better to go through the demolition bylaw. So I think this is, I think you have to be very careful that your policies don't, on the one hand, encourage people not to rehabilitate and spruce up their house, and on the other hand, you don't want them to, you don't want, I don't think, you don't want to encourage them to demolish their house. So I'd be opposed to this change.
Just taking notes here, sorry.
Yeah, anyone else, does anyone else want to speak on this or have any questions? Okay,
I'm just finishing a thought. Okay. Okay, moving on to Article 10. So this is more of a housekeeping article. It's in the table of uses. We're deleting one word. This is for the table of uses in section 3 to be consistent with the existing language in the section 10, which is the definitions. No projects are affected by this change. All we're doing is taking out this word attached in group 1 because as of now, there's no such thing as a single-family attached dwelling. It's just a single-family dwelling. So we're taking the word out attached because we missed it the last time.
Just a quick question, it's one word in one place?
Correct. It's already been taken out in other places.
Well, it's in the same, it's actually a couple, it's all, section 3 is the table of use, district group 1, it's actually 2 times it appears under this, but it's 2.
yeah, let me, because people on the cable probably didn't hear what was, because the audience is not mic'd. The question was, is this just the removal of a single word in at one use of a single word?
Well, it's used twice, but it's in the.
The question was, is this just a single removal? So the answer is there are multiples. Isn't that
Well,
more?
the point is to get rid of, if there's more than one occurrence, that will also be deleted.
We don't use the word attached anywhere else in the zoning bylaw. Okay,
Sorry, I guess, John Miller again. This makes a lot of sense to remove that word in the place that Brian has shown us, but the way it's presented in the article is to remove the word attached in all places it appears. So it's hard to get public comment when the public doesn't know what they're commenting on. So I would, if there are other places, they should be disclosed.
So, yeah, the only places that we're trying to move the word attached is specifically when it's referred to an attached dwelling. So I should make that more clear, or,
Maureen, you're looking specifically at District Group 1, number 3, has the attached twice in it. It's just not circled on here.
but it's just talking about that section.
Yeah, it's only in that. So you see the word attached
Yep,
dwelling?
I
It's just
do.
not circled in his presentation.
Yeah,
So those are the 2 words he's referencing.
seems to me properly worded. This is not a problem.
okay, thank you.
Understood?
The background for that is that we had previous definitions of attached and non-attached, which were confusing and conflicting, and we removed those definitions, and we've discovered that this attached dwelling was just left over. We forgot to take this word out.
Article 11, so this is dealing with site plan review, section 9.5.7. The objective here is to minimize any adverse effects of additions or new construction on neighboring properties. Projects that are addressed by this change are all site plan review applications. So this is what's currently in 9.5.7 relating to criteria for endorsing a site plan review for, it depends who's the special permit granting authority, either the zoning board or the planning board, but this is currently what's on the books, these 11 criteria. They deal from departure from the character, materials, and scale of buildings to adverse effects on historic resources to any environmental effects, stormwater effects, safety, obstruction of views, glare from headlights having to do with parking. And a 12th that is proposed is to minimize any other adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. Site plan review, like I said, addresses safety, drainage, and these several other things. This new subsection will allow the zoning board of appeals to take into consideration other adverse effects that don't relate to the public way, which most of these do, such as new structures that potentially negatively affect the properties to the rear or sides of a parcel. So it's just this, it's the addition of just this one sentence to a kind of a catch-all of minimize any other adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. That is all I have for Article 11.
We have a couple of, why don't we go in reverse order this time, or, okay?
Just a question, that seems rather ambiguous, any other adverse effect, it's an undefined condition, unlike the other conditions, you're not specifying what, it's just anything that anybody happens to think is adverse. You know, it's too ambiguous.
Okay, the comment from the audience, for those out in TV land, is that the words adverse effect are too ambiguous, and this was Mr. Tony Conti making that statement.
Sorry to be up here a third time.
All right.
John Miller from Westland Avenue. This, to me, is the most problematic change that you propose, because it's not even-handed. You could add a 13th, which would say, maximize the property owner's use of his or her property. And because what you're writing is you're writing a standard that is subjective. Minimize any other adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. But it's the property owner that's applying for site plan review or for a special use permit when we get to the other sections you propose. But this is a completely subjective standard. All it does is put property owners at risk without understanding what the criteria are. You could delete the first 10 or 11 standards and just say, go to this one, and say that site plan review is to minimize adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. You wouldn't need the other ones. And that's the reason why you have the first 11, because people who are thinking about doing something with their home need guidance and need an understanding of what it is they're planning about, what it is they're thinking about, and how it's going to be received. If you want to make every single thing contested, do something like this, and you will have people objecting. And I just think it's the wrong direction. It's not even-handed, and it's completely subjective. That's why you have the first 11, to not be subjective. So I think it's a mistake to undo it with a new 12th one. Thank you.
Roger Wilson from Precinct 1. I agree with the previous speaker.
Thank you for being brief.
Brevity is, as they say, the soul of wit.
Okay, does anyone else have any further questions or comments on this article? Then we will move on to the next.
So this is amending Section 10 definitions, is to correct an inconsistency between the definition of parking space and Section 5.1.6. Projects in which, the projects that are addressed are any projects in which new parking is provided. So in 5.1.6, it says that the minimum width has to be 9 feet and the minimum depth has to be 19 feet. But in the definition of a parking space, it says that it has to equal 200 square feet. So 9 times 19 is 171.
No. Is it?
I believe it is.
Okay.
So 9 times 19 should be the minimum. We are fine with the minimum length and width of the parking spot being 9 by 19. This was an inconsistency. Someone's like, I'm giving you 9 by 19, but I'm somehow deficient because I don't have 200 square feet, this was actually one of the crux of the CVS case, was this specific change that we are now finally making. We wanted to wait until the decision was rendered. So this is, the only thing this article is doing is deleting the number 200 and putting in 171. Are there any questions related to this article? Article 13, so this has to do with the center business district. This objective of this article is to increase the maximum floor area which may be granted by special permit, specifically in the East Core subzone of the CBD. Projects that would be addressed by this change deal with projects in the CBD that are trying to go above 2.5 of an FAR in the East Core. So the East Core is the area, you can't really see my mouse too well, but essentially it's basically Mount Vernon and into Thompson and some of Maine, as well as a little bit up on northern Maine. So it's this area here. As you can see, almost all of these buildings cover nearly the entirety of their lot. So it's dominated by small parcels, not too much open space there. They're rather they're nearly filling the entire lot. So quick slide on what FAR is. It's essentially the bulk of the building. So all of these are an FAR of 1. So you can either cover the entire lot with 1 floor, or you can cover half the lot with 2 floors, a quarter of the lot with 4 floors. It's just taking the square footage of the lot and saying if your FAR is 1, it's just saying you can't build more than, if it's a 10,000 square foot lot, you can't build more than 10,000 square feet of space. So by right height in this area of the East Core is 45 feet, which is typically 4 stories, but can be 3, depending upon how you do the first floor. But the max FAR that's currently allowed in these would only allow 2.5 stories. The reason being that since the buildings that are currently there cover the whole lot, so there's this inconsistency between this, by saying, how can you say that there's a by right of 45 feet, but then it doesn't matter because you can really only go up to maybe 25 feet because of your FAR. So this was, the board wanted to make it closer to at least what the by right height was, and the aim was to fix that inconsistency between the height and the FAR / number of stories. This is the only change that's associated with this is the maximum floor area ratio, specifically in the East Core for 7.3.12. The 1.5 by right, that's still the same. And instead of allowing it to go up to 2.5, the change would allow to go slightly larger at 2.75, but only with a special permit. So anything above 1.5, you still need to come to the planning board for a special permit. This is just allowing the max to potentially go higher because there are specific sites that can accommodate it. Some other sites might not be able to, and that's why it's a special permit and therefore can be denied. So the CBD regulations aim to encourage residences in near transit and commercial businesses without destroying the desired downtown aesthetic. That was one of the main objectives of the Center Business District. Several properties within the East Core would not be allowed to go up to a full or even a partial 3rd floor under the current limits. Increasing this special permit FAR will allow for appropriate additions to 2-story buildings. Again, the by right FAR will stay the same. There has been comments that have been received both from the Historical Commission, and this was put on this docket for this evening with a 4-to-1 vote. And the only the negative that was seen as this of increasing the FAR was that it possibly could invite more development in the historical area along Thompson Street, for example, because those are small structures that are taking up the entire lot. The comment is that it could potentially increase the amount of demolition because there's more money to be made because there's more bulk that's allowed. So that's been the other side of the coin. I believe that's it for that. So if there are any questions or comments related to Article 13,
Okay.
2, 3.
Why don't we hear from people we haven't heard from before? So let's start.
So Hanklin Canal Street, I think the FAR or
Excuse me, one
Okay.
second. When people come up, they usually are saying their names before they sit down. So you're not at the right place for the microphone, so please.
so Hanklin Canal Street, I think just suggestion. I think floor area need to be better defined because I look at the article now, it's not well defined because we have seen the example of 844 Main Street. That whole building, although there's an enclosed porch, I don't know that's included in the whole structure or not.
It is. It's not. There's no ports on there. Anyway,
So,
but-
so for that, so GBD3 FAR is 1. So apparently that is exceeding FAR 1. I think that's my observation.
I mean, FAR is FAR. That's a definition. There's no further definition needed for FAR.
But
FAR is
for
it's
floor area need to be better defined. That's my suggestion.
Flo-
Like a
floor-
floor area.
Floor area is a defined
It's a
term
defined term.
in the zoning bylaws.
Yes, but I think need to be detail defined. So under one roof, how you define exterior structure or wall?
Floor area is,
I mean, we can go there,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, but
it
that's-
is
that's
it
one-
is
one of
very
my
detailed. It
suggestions.
is
Yeah,
very
yeah.
detailed. If you look in the definition section, what floor area is, it's there and it's extremely clear.
Okay.
I think people actually
Why
want
don't-
to understand
why
it.
don't-
I can certainly go to
why
the
don't why don't we
definition.
pop
For
up the
clarity's sake.
definition of floor area?
Well, I actually think the drawing is.
Ah,
Oops. Yeah, you search floor area. It's in section 10.
Yep,
Yeah, it's in the definition section.
Yes.
If you-
can you go backwards?
Yeah, it's right. So, is aggregate horizontal area in square feet of all floors of a building or several buildings on the same lot, measured from the exterior faces of walls enclosing each building, exclusive of garages, cellars, and attic areas used only for storage or for service incidental to the operation or maintenance of such building or building.
So from this definition, is enclosed porch included in the floor area?
I would think an enclosed porch would definitely be included because
Okay.
it's enclosed.
So, so apparently that 844 Main Street building
Mhm.
exceeding FAR 1 because it's GBD3 that clearly defined as 1. You can do a physical
I
observation.
know, but it sounds like you're talking about a very specific project.
Yeah. But
We're here to talk,
yeah,
about the
but that's
articles.
my suggestion because I think this not really clear defined in that term, in that floor area.
Okay, so what you would like it to indicate whether or not an enclosed porch
Yes.
is part of it? Okay.
Yes.
So, because the 844 Main Street is not part of this.
Yeah, I know.
Discussion.
But I just
Okay.
have my suggestion.
Okay, so we will
Take that.
take that into consideration. That will be an article for probably the Springtown meeting.
Will you look at that building? Because there's been a couple comments about 844 Main to check.
Someone was next.
Yeah, why don't we, John Clemson, you're next, a new voice.
John Clemson, Precinct 3, town meeting member. I'm on the Historical Commission. Not speaking for the rest of the commission. I'm very concerned about the increase of FAR. The East Core of the CBD has the largest collection of historic buildings in the downtown, mostly from the 1890s. And I think that these two-story, there are a number of two-story buildings included in this group, the Lieberman block, the White block, Locatelli block, that will be placed in threat of demolition. And I feel that the site plan review or the special permitting is not an adequate regulation. I think a lot of times special permits go through with conditions that don't really, I think that a higher level of regulation is needed in this area of the downtown. I think there are cases where increased square footage could be placed on top of some of these buildings, but we have to be done very carefully. I think Dennis Carlone's thoughts a couple of weeks ago at your meeting were suggesting a more careful study of some of these buildings might really solve this problem. But I think a blanket increase of FAR is really going to place some of these really important buildings, National Register listed, in danger. So, thanks.
Let's see, we have someone else who wants to rise. Mr. Conti, you want to come forward, please?
Anthony Conti, 80 Harvard Street. I want to congratulate the board for taking into consideration the desperate need in Winchester that we have for additional commercial development. Homeowners pay something like 95% of all property taxes in Winchester because we have so little commercial property. This proposal is an excellent one to make a margin. It won't be a big increase, obviously. It only affects a limited area, but it's a step in the right direction. We need more commercial development in Winchester so as to relieve the burden on residential property owners. So I compliment the board. I know you're not used to hearing that from me, but
We take compliments
take it.
wherever we can
Wherever we
get
can get 'em.
very happy to see this proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Clarify that this we would not anticipate commercial, we anticipate residential on upper floors.
I would also,
That's
I would
important to
say
make sure
thank you
everyone-
for your support, but to be very clear, what would happen would be, from this, generally what we think, only because that's what has happened, is that we will still want that first floor commercial, but what this would allow for is additional residential units.
Well, it's
Just don't take it back, don't take it.
additional commercial, it's additional
Bulk,
property development.
there's additional
Yes,
bulk to the
exactly.
building.
There is
There's no
additional
doubt about
bulk,
it.
and we, you know, the person who builds, puts that extra room on it will put whatever they want up there.
Right.
It's just, the market is going residential these days, so.
As a rule.
Okay, we have Mr. Miller back again. Got to keep that seat hot.
John Miller again, sorry?
Got to keep that seat hot for you.
Well, you asked for public comment.
Yeah, I like it.
we
I like it,
welcome
thank
it.
you.
Sorry
Welcome
about that. I
That was just
don't mean to
a small
interfere.
comment.
Oh, you're not, please, don't take that as an interference,
So,
that is encouragement.
I guess my question is, you know, I understand that, you know, 3 stories, you want to keep it under 3 stories by the height restrictions as you explain this, Brian. But it seems to me that why not go to 3? Why go from 2.5 to 2.75 if all these properties are going to have special permit requirements anyway? And if they're historic buildings, there's going to be a different set of rules that apply. And well, they'll go through a different process. Well, there'll be no difference if I want to do something with a historic building than any other building.
Well, the historic buildings do have,
If you want to put an addition on it, you mean, or do you want to?
I want, if I'm not a developer. I don't want to do anything.
The
a
point is to
hypothetical.
figure
A
out.
But I'm just saying,
hypothetical.
if you're trying to encourage people to live downtown and be closer to transit and be closer to the train and get on the bus, or if you're an older citizen of Winchester, you want to move downtown, then why not go to 3? Because the likely result is if you have an FAR of 3, that is all the bulk. Now, it's still subject to an architect figuring out what makes sense for each building. And these all require special permits, as you said. And why try to give an architect such a difficult assignment to add 3/4 of a floor somewhere? I'm not sure.
Because we want the building to step back as they go up.
Then then.
That's why you do the 2.75.
But
And
this-
also,
Okay,
and
but,
then the majority of buildings that cover 100% in the East Core are historical buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So in the guidelines of the historical buildings in the East Core, if additions are placed on them, it is stated that they need to step back.
so I guess what I would say is I think you're making a decision in advance of any particular building or lot that the answer for that particular building or lot is an automatic step back. And I don't see why you would want to do
We've
that.
actually, Brian did a survey of the buildings that would be affected by
Mm-hmm.
this, which he's bringing up, and the question is, does this really, would going to 3 change the outcome? And Brian, please let us know.
So, well, I don't know.
The que-
Say it again, sorry.
Could you build any higher with an FAR of 3 than an FAR of 2.75 in the East Core? I think one of the things you asked is, could these buildings go up to 3 stories? That's your last column there.
Right,
Well, an FAR of 3 would be 3 times the area of the lot.
correct.
So that's, I mean, it can't go higher than 3
No,
if you
so-
use the whole lot.
Yeah, it was more of what, I guess what Heather was saying in terms of the consensus was that, 3, if you're saying you can go to a full third story on these historic buildings that have 2 stories, that could potentially see the problem, of what we were talking about, is that it might have, demolition might be the result, whereas what we want to encourage is a 3rd floor on these older buildings, the 2nd floor that has a step back. So,
All I'm saying is, I come from the engineering world, there are ways to keep the facade. There are ways to do all kinds of things to a historic building. This happens all the time in Boston. Why would you automatically conclude what the architectural answer is for every structure in this district? And I'm just suggesting you might just go to 3 and let the architects and engineers figure out what makes sense for each property. No owner is going to do something stupid. It's their money.
okay.
So, since other planning board members are speaking, I believe that we were advised that once others speak, I should be able to speak as well. So I want to say, I don't want to see additional stories on our historic buildings in the East Core or anywhere in the town center. If you look at Wellesley, if you look at Concord, you look at Lexington, Belmont, and I've done Google Street View, aerial view on the ground. None of them put extra stories on their historic buildings. To me, the scale of what you see when you're coming from the Baptist church and looking toward the town center is really important, and this will definitely change what you see on the roofs of these historic buildings.
I just
and-
want to point out that Heather's comment was,
Yeah.
was actually, the question was.
I'm addressing the discussion about going up further, and I want to make it clear, I don't want to see putting extra stories on historic buildings, because the presentation should make it very clear what the objections are to this. And it's not just demolition, it's also that this would enable adding an extra story visibly on these historic buildings.
Okay.
I don't know, there were other people who.
Yes, we're gonna turn back to the crowd since we want public input. Someone else, if you would please come forward.
Hi there. I'm Rhonda Hodges. I live in 2 Summit Ave, Precinct 3. I've lived in town 25 years, old house, quite close to a bunch of other old houses that are mostly 2.5 stories. And I can't imagine having another story put on these houses. We live very close to one another, and the feeling that would be very difficult to imagine. I think it would ruin just how it feels, what you've bought originally. Number one would change, and just the whole character for the area and the neighborhood. But in any case, I agree a lot with John Clemson and Maureen. I just think that in the East Core, where I live too, would not be a great idea on those houses.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Hi, Ellen Spencer, Precinct 7. I'm also a member of the Design Review Committee. I just have a question. I'm not as up on all the details of the different cores and PUDs, but is it not a fact that there are many other areas in the CBD that are open for this kind of development, such
Yes.
that we do not need to start tinkering with the historic core? So, I mean,
We were approached by an owner who wanted to put an extra floor and was unable to do so because of this limitation. So to answer your question, yes, there are other parts of the CBD which are open to larger developments, but this section is also interested in development as well.
But the East Core, you should just, Brian, could you point out where the East Core
Yeah.
PUD is? Because it's pretty
The East,
large.
yeah, the East Core PUD covers the Mill Pond site, as well as portions of the back of, it's China Sky and the back of CVS.
And this goes to Scotty, the insurance building next to the,
So it doesn't, yeah, sorry, this first
from
one,
there
correct.
all the way east.
Yep, all the way to here,
Yep,
and then it covers to about here.
it's huge.
well, it's a large area, and I would just echo, I agree with John Clemson that this early in the whole, in this whole process, which is a whole new thing for the town, is not the time also to be experimenting, if you will, with the historic core. And I think Maureen's mention of Belmont, Lexington, and Concord should be a compelling one, because those are thriving, vibrant town centers that I would think we'd want to emulate.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone else who wants to speak on this article? Sure, come on up.
I'm Nancy Schrock. I'm chair of the Archives Advisory Committee and volunteer with the archives for 30 years. I'm concerned about a large-scale change in zoning based on one request for an adaptation to a building, and also one that's in the historic area. So I would be interested in, because I'm a visual person and I've been looking at photographs of the town center that span 120 years and have a consistency, I'd like to know what this would look like rather than just seeing charts and Excel spreadsheets. What does it mean to have a step back? What are examples of town centers that have effectively used step backs? I know they can be used effectively, but I think to have a blanket permission to do that could be dangerous at this early stage. So,
Thank you.
thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, by all means.
Thank you for speaking.
Let me just finish writing down what you said. Okay.
I'm Roger Wilson from Precinct 1. I believe I was on the third floor of the laundry building. I had I can't remember what floor I was on, but I had a business downtown, and it didn't seem all that high up to me. But just want to ask a question. Didn't a number of these buildings used to have a third floor historically?
A couple. So there's really just two, yeah. So the white pharmacy building, the white building there, and then the Lyceum building.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of historical evidence that change is good, that a third floor could certainly be accommodated downtown, and I think we're moving in the right direction to concentrate development in the downtown area.
Thank you. Okay, one more, and then I think we have to move on. Just,
Hello. Russell Gay, Precinct 8. I just wanted to make an observation about some of the comments about adding some more business to the center. I can understand that. But I was curious, what has become of the lot or the area where on corner of Swanton Street and Washington Street that was supposed to be proposed CVS?
Right.
So I was curious why that hasn't become developed, sort of a three-story, so you'd have
Well-
mixed use, so you'd have commercial on the first floor and residential on the second and third floor?
well, we're not privy to all of the details, but currently, I mean, we know that went to land court, there was problems, then the person who owned the property is deceased, and then it's uncertain what's going to happen to that property. So
But what is the neighborhood, what is the surrounding neighborhood? Do they welcome change?
the surrounding neighborhood,
It's welcome, a
the
three-story?
I can't speak to that
The
because,
only thing we know is that they were wholeheartedly against the CVS.
well,
But
we
that
know,
doesn't mean anything else other than that, other than they didn't
Well,
want a
But that's
CVS there.
But that's commercial.
It's not the
So in other
CVS
words, if you
is
put the
application.
CVS that's downtown, which is a one-story, and I know it's quite an ugly facade, if you moved it there, and you'd have, good quality architectural design, and it'll be a third story, so that's commercial on the first floor, you'd have residential second,
I
third
think that's
floor.
more of the property owners, whatever they're going to do. You're talking about a potential, why don't we do a zoning
Well, I'm
change
just
there?
curious,
or-
because the dynamic of people living off of Main Street would be facing the same thing with the residents that are living adjacent to the CVS.
yeah,
So are they welcoming a three-story mixed?
I think
Or
we can't,
four-story?
we can't
I don't
speak
know.
for the neighborhood, and unfortunately, this isn't the greatest venue for this discussion, because we really are just trying to move through these articles.
Right.
So, we don't know what's gonna happen to the lot at Swanton and Washington. We don't know what the neighbors will think of the next development. We know that there was certainly opposition to the development that was proposed there, and factually, that's all we can say.
Okay, and just to follow up with some of the comments about the downtown, I do agree with, the idea of welcoming some more business into that, but I think a height restriction, at least in theme with the historical tradition of Winchester being a town, so it still keeps the integrity of that, although you could have, 3 or 4 stories possibly, but if you have something that's a monstrosity,
It wouldn't be allowed. If
and
there's-
if it was, even if it wasn't in character of the materials like brick, if you had like a 4-deck of vinyl siding that looked like Somerville, I think that would be kind of,
that's addressed under other parts of our zoning bylaws in terms of what the building looks like. So that's a separate issue from this one in
Yeah,
particular.
it is, well, because it was mentioned previously that it's like kind of not necessarily like a blanket, like you can go up there. We have 45 pages of design guidelines, so it's not like anyone's given a pass. They have to adhere to the design
No,
guidelines.
they don't.
We can make them adhere to the guidelines.
We are able to, exactly, but we can't. I mean,
Exactly,
It
'cause
really is at the discretion of the board, so it depends on how the
It's-
board votes.
It's the discretion of the board, which is an elected board of this town.
Which could change at any time. I
Which
think
could
that's the
change
point,
at
is
any
that
time.
this board might be very,
But-
yeah.
I think we
We're a
can,
little
when the
protective
board
ourselves.
gets together and discusses all of the pros and cons of this, we have very fervent opinions on this board, on both sides of this. It will illustrate some more of the challenges.
judging from the comments, do people value the integrity of the historic downtown of Winchester, or do they want to make it more like Somerville?
No, people.
I don't think that's the,
The
I'm just saying what it
guidelines,
is.
the guidelines, I urge people to read the Center Business District zoning and the guidelines, which are very clear about protecting what the central business district is now. It's very clear, there's incredibly clear language. We have many guidelines which are given to developers so that they produce things that fit in with the central business district, the existing architecture. So that is it's been a focus of this board from the outset to protect that. So we know it's important to the town, and it's written in the zoning bylaws and the guidelines. So I urge people to read those, and then if you feel they are not strong enough or they don't reflect what you think should happen, so please contact us. But this is not done in a vacuum. This particular thing is done within the context of the guidelines and the zoning bylaws.
Well, since you're commenting, I really do feel that that's one of my concerns, that I feel as if these can be waived very
Yes.
easily,
And-
and they really don't. I mean, it's not really force of law. These are guidelines, and it's really up to any given board what proceeds. So to me, these guidelines are just that, and there's a great deal of vulnerability to what we would get if this FAR changes. So
Well,
that's
I would,
the concern.
I would really like to get the rest of the public input on this. The board will have ample time to discuss this.
You know, the one you're commenting
I
on,
understand, but I was answering a question of the gentleman,
I didn't
so,
think it was an accurate answer, that's all.
okay. Can we, is there someone else who wants to speak on this issue? Well, then I think we can move on to the next article. Thank you.
Article 14. So the objective here is to protect neighborhoods off of North Main Street from commercial building encroachment by changing the zoning of portions of 39 parcels. The projects that are addressed by this change are all the parcels in the GBD 2 and 3, as well as some in the RG zoning districts along the northern part of Main Street. I know you can't see this, but this is just showing the general, so this is Main Street going north, this, and you can see that Cross Street is well, you can't see it, but I'm telling you. So it's near the Woburn line that we're talking about. So this is, in orange is the GBD 3, and you can see, hopefully, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit later, that the zoning districts, they're not parcel-based. Some of them are based on 150 feet off of Main Street. Others are clearly much more than 150 feet. And it does cut some parcels. You see these two parcels, for example, there's portions where 10%, 20%, 40% of parcels are cut between two zoning districts. So this is the GBD2. I'm gonna, well, this just exemplifies it a little bit more of how this zoning district line goes. This causes confusion for some property owners, and also doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not like you can have certain uses on one side, and then residential uses on the other side of your property. So Article 14 has to deal with the rezone of these parcels along Main Street that were previously, portions of the parcel were in GBD 2 and portions were in the RG, and these are now going all into the RG.
Brian, do you want to talk about the concerns of a property owner who has part of their property in the GBD and part in the RG?
Sure. So if you are a property owner with some of your property in the RG and some in the GBD, the only thing that you can essentially do if you have enough space is you could potentially sell off a portion of your land. Most of the time in these cases along Main Street, the parcels are either the frontage is not wide enough, the parcel's not wide enough, or there's not enough square footage. So there's really no way to lessen your parcel. You can't sell off a portion of your parcel to a commercial entity, and because it makes your property even more non-conforming.
There's also the problem is that since the property line is essentially in CBD, they could actually use the zoning regulations in CBD, which have different, in GBD, which have different setbacks than RG.
again, I think, so, well, I won't say again, we're just gonna keep moving. And then these are the parcels that are going to be rezoned. Almost all of these parcels, and we'll see this in the next slide, all of these parcels, out of the 39, about 19 of them, it's effective, what we're saying is effectively no change, meaning that there's only residential uses allowed on that property. There's no way you can sell any portion of your land to another commercial entity. It's simply, it's not doing anything for you, regardless of whether you might, you might think that it's somehow potentially worth more. The only thing, and some people are saying, well, why can't I just sell off that piece? Again, I've just said that it will make your property either already non-conforming or even more non-conforming, which wouldn't be allowed. Sorry. So this is every parcel that's up for potential rezone. It's 39, like I said. If you look at this last column of effective change, so all the yellows are, as I said, effectively no change, meaning that there's nothing that you are necessarily gaining or losing from this. There are the other terms are up zone and down zone. Up zone, it has to do with flexibility. So up zone means that you're going, generally it's going from a residential parcel to a commercial or industrial parcel. You have more flexibility to do what you want, therefore it's considered an up zone. So we had seen about 20, oh, sorry, that's 18. This is a mistake up here. It's 18 parcels, no change. 2 parcels are an up zone, 9 parcels are officially down zones. We can obviously go back to these if anyone has questions. I don't. So the background here. So in the year 2000, the zoning along the corridor was changed from GBD and light industrial. That's what several of those much larger parcels that are much larger than 50, those were actually light industrial parcels along Main Street. Those got all changed to GBD. And then a number of these traditionally residential lots on the side streets are included in these mixed-use districts, and these districts have significantly larger structures associated with them. Structures in the GBD 2 and 3 can go to 3 stories by right, and they have different setbacks. They can cover more of the lot. They need less open space. General, just what you would think of for business properties. The planning board's concerned about the integrity of the residential character and specifically the scale of the neighborhoods, should these lots be converted from residential to some type of mixed commercial use. So the board proposes to change the residential parcels on the fringes of GBD 2 and 3 to RG 6.5 to maintain the character of these neighborhoods. So that's all I have for that. I know there are a number of people that want to speak on this article. One has even brought in a presentation. We would limit it again probably to 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So
3 minutes, yeah.
because you asked prior to the meeting, you can go first.
If I could, the planning board says on its website that every person has 5 minutes to speak.
Okay.
It does?
I wasn't aware of that.
I can
Yeah.
show it to you.
No, I believe you. I just don't, where did it say that?
It's the Winchester Planning Board Procedures for Public Hearings, paragraph 9C.
Yeah, this is it. So, I mean, yeah, that's so, okay. I mean, but generally public hearings have to do with any type of special permit or a site plan review or a subdivision control law.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Brian, but when you and I spoke last week, because I didn't think I'd be able to make it here, I know you told me I had 5 minutes. Or
I have no problem with the 5 minutes. I certainly don't want to waste time telling whether we have 5 minutes. Let's just go.
Because I thought I might have to.
Okay.
Get back to you to someone.
Okay, why don't we hear from people we haven't heard from before, just so we get a little diversity up at the table? Pardon?
This is his neighborhood.
Yeah, he's the one who gave he's the one who asked prior
I'm
to
sorry.
speak
Well,
and
then
give
come
it
right
as a
on up.
presentation.
I know it's his neighborhood. We're going to get to everyone who wants to speak. So what?
So Hanklin Canal Street, I'm speaking on behalf of my neighborhood, the Canal Street neighborhood. So the fact about the neighborhood. So 400 feet radius from the intersection of Main Street and Canal Street. So that's the reason we have a sign of children here. 11 parcels, we have 16 children under 12 years old. So current zoning, we have clinics on the right side, Sakura on the left side. So they are business. and historical residential as a business now. And we are a partial historical residential, partial business. So 4 GBD and 7 RG. And we strongly agree with the proposal. So back to residential for 2 lots. So during school hours, there's a high pedestrian and car traffic. That's everybody knows. You can see this the photo I took yesterday. And during peak hours, we have high volume of parallel parking on the street, which really obstruct two-way traffic. So a lot of people using Canal Street as a shortcut to Lake Street and Palmer Street. So if those 2 historical residential remain to be business district, so which really allow the parcel assembling. So for that residential, historical residential lot to be combined with the Sakura lot. So that's solely the purpose that smaller residential, historical residential was purchased for. So that really want to be assembled with a Sakura lot and building a retail residential building. Potential issues, even worse traffic on the Canal Street. Keep in mind, there's a hazard for students going to school. So I estimate there are 50 to 100 students using Canal Street to go to Lynch. So I think that's the same concerns raised by recent 6054 Main Street building. The size of building, the height of the building, issues with on-street parking, that's already happened with the clinics on the right, and the traffic and the safety problems. So that's the same concerns that would be raised if that two lot has been assembled and building a residential and retail mixed-use building. So here is an exterior looking for 6054. Actually, it's not. It's Love and Kendall Square. That's only 1 block away from my office. That's a 3 minutes walk to Kendall Square station right now. So that's under construction now. So can you really tell, are we in Kendall Square or Winchester? If that happens.
That's right.
Okay, so that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. I'm sorry. You say you represented Canal Street parcels, but I wanted to make very clear to us, because
Yes,
we're taking
okay.
notes here. Well, no,
Yeah.
just let me finish a quick
Okay.
thing. Of all the parcels that you are representing, are any of them are any of them split between residential and commercial?
So,
So- So one. Okay. Out of the 6 or 7 houses you're representing?
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because
And
if
one-
none, for instance, if all of you were residential parcels, then it's a little, it's a little different. So thank you for that information.
Can I speak?
Please.
Hi, my name is Tammy Raff. I live at 15 Canal Street, and I'm Hank and Sheena's neighbor. And I share a lot of the concerns that Hank had shared about, we have kids next to us, across from us, diagonal to us, probably about 8 altogether, and maybe even more. And I'm concerned about the, more commercial, means more traffic, it decreases the safety of the street and the neighborhood. And the other thing is, I just want to say, is that when I'm looking out my kitchen window, I really, really don't want to be looking at a tall building. So that's the other part of it. But first and foremost, safety is the main issue as far as I'm concerned. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone? Okay.
Does this gentleman want to speak first, or it's fine?
Sure, okay. Mr. Conte, you want to come forward again, please?
A busy night.
Anthony Conti, Harvard Street, Precinct 2. Okay, thank you. I want to suggest that this proposal is a solution looking for a problem. Most of these lots have very little potential for commercial development. However, one of the principal potential uses that I can see is for parking for the existing properties, many of them along Main Street that are zoned commercial and will stay commercial under this proposal. Many of them have the potential for expansion, but many of them have problems meeting parking requirements. The most that I frankly can't conceive of very many of these lots having much in the way of commercial potential. They've been zoned, many of them were zoned back in 1990. One of the advantages of gray hair is remembering, I sat in town meeting back in 1990 when this was done, when the planning board came to us and said, we need to make this change, and the town meeting adopted it. But since then, there's been virtually no development of any of these properties. So I think there's limited potential. For people who are afraid of commercial development in their neighborhoods, it's been zoned commercial for a long time and nothing's happened. All right, so I think it's unnecessary to raise fears that there's going to be some vast commercial development in this area when nothing has happened over the last 18 years. So, however, I think that one of the potentials is for additional parking. That in order to expand some of these properties that will remain commercial under the proposal, some of these properties could be used for parking expansion, which is badly needed. Winchester, I hate to be redundant, but we don't have enough commercial property in this town. That's why taxes are so high. So encouraging conversion of some of these properties, and you mentioned that you can't make a lot further increase its nonconformity by dividing a lot that is half zone commercial and half residential. Well, that doesn't stop you from selling the entire lot. Downzoning these properties will reduce the value of properties that people have owned for many years, and there are some properties that you're proposing to downzone, particularly, I know the property on Water Street has been zoned commercial from the 1920s, and I think it's particularly unfair to downzone that property, and so you're reducing the value of people's property that have owned the property for many years, and I really don't see the necessity for it because I don't think that there's very much potential, given the nature of the market, for commercial development in the vast majority of these parcels. Okay, so in short, it's a solution in search of a problem. We don't have a problem. Thank you.
Do you know if any residents from Water Street are here?
Yes. Yes, please come forward.
Hi.
Okay. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. Some of us have met before. Ms. Marion, I didn't see you the last time we were here. My name is...
Can you say your name?
Yes, I will. My name is Cheryl Pierce. I am the homeowner of 810 Water Street, and my family has an almost 100-year presence on North Main Street. My grandparents purchased 905 Main Street in the 1920s and acquired 810 Water Street in 1948. I grew up here with generations of family, so I know the character of this area. I continue to oppose the proposed rezoning and will do so at town meeting. I oppose it for 3 basic reasons. First, the proposed zoning change robs me of the economic viability of redevelopment. My lot is too commercial for anyone to want to build a new single-family home there. Given the curve in Main Street, my property is directly across Water Street from the parking lot of a commercial development and nestled among business uses. As a result, my property is intrinsically commercial in character, and good planning and the zoning bylaw should continue to acknowledge this. But it is not just me. The proposed change harms tax-paying citizens whose property, like mine, is already surrounded by commercial uses, we who are surrounded by the loud noise, traffic, and neon lights of existing commercial activity. Development in this area has long continued under rules that provided a 150-foot belt of commerce along Main Street. The proposal would strand remaining residential properties in this belt in their current, less desirable use, thereby undermining their value. By zoning these properties residential, the proposal would unfairly force them to act as a buffer zone for other properties further from Main Street. At your last meeting, a board member said, "I like your house. I want to keep your house." Well, the reality is that, however zoned my house is, my house wants to be a teardown. It is almost 100 years old. When I inherited it from my mother and grandmother, it had been capital-starved for years. It is falling apart. The only issue is whether the property can be redeveloped in an economically viable way. Second, the proposed change in law is against the interests of the town. Commercial uses in this belt along Main Street are more viable than residential and contribute more to the tax base. We should promote commercial uses that mitigate the tax burden on residential taxpayers rather than zone for residential use in an area that is in fact commercial. Attractive commercial development, like the plaza where Brugger's Bagels and the Pairings Wine Store benefits the town and its tax base. If we want positive development rather than the negative impact of continued deterioration, we must promote healthy economics. Finally, the proposed changes have been put forward without sufficient public study and public discussion. We should focus on steps to enhance the Main Street commercial corridor and promote more tax-paying businesses. As I stated during the last meeting, my property is different from the other properties you propose to rezone. It is the only property that abuts commercial property in one direction and directly faces commercial property in another direction head-on. You claim there is some rationale to the properties you choose for rezoning, but you also stated during your last meeting that you did no analyses and you performed no studies. It follows that you simply picked certain properties, including mine, for rezoning without any property-by-property analyses, leaving my property and me victimized. This is not fair, nor is it what the law requires. Moreover, the chairperson stated during the last meeting that he wants to do this to prevent commercial development in his neighborhood. While I do not believe self-interest is an appropriate consideration for a planning board member, the designation of my property does not affect his property. In sum, the proposed change in law strands outmoded housing in the past by changing the law in a counterproductive manner. It is bad public policy and it is unfair.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will say one thing. There has been a lot of discussion this evening about preserving the integrity of the historical core. And I know the core, being almost 60 years old, don't tell anyone, and from my parents and grandparents. I think using North Main Street wisely and planning well alleviates the potential of damaging the core. And if you look back in the architectural history of Winchester, that lovely little book that you can get down at the bookstore, Chapter 3 actually refers to the town fathers in the Victorian era specifically wanting to preserve the core, and therefore designating that business and industry be moved up to where Beggs and Cobb and all of these other things were. So they are not out of line with what you were thinking, but this 150-foot rule, and that has been followed all these years since, was, I think, probably to protect that core, was one of their initiatives. And I think if you look at planning in terms of as a whole parcel, no pun intended, where you could improve setbacks. If the setbacks are ancient, improve those. Restrictions on height. There are lots of ways of really actually doing both. I mean, maintaining some commercial viability, protecting the core, and protecting the residents in all of these areas.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could you please give me the map?
I want to address a couple of things, since one of them A couple of them were comments about what the planning board said at its last meeting, and I think it may be pertinent here. The studies that we made were studies based on looking at the existing use of the properties. We did examine each property individually. We did not make an economic study, this is true, but we did not single out any particular property. We looked at all of the properties and sought to determine what their existing use was. The second thing I want to say is, yes, I do live on Canal Street. I've lived there since 1996 or 7. My concern is, as a resident of North Main Street, not just concerned about Canal Street, I'm concerned about all of the streets. I'm concerned about Rumford and Water and just all the rest of them whose names I can't remember at the moment. So yes, because I sit on Canal Street, I can see what's happening to the neighborhoods there. Will it affect my property? Not at all. I live a whole block off of Main Street. I have an 1895 house which was also in somewhat disrepair. It's now repaired. So that was, I shouldn't have said that, I apologize. It has nothing to do with this. But the point is, I can observe and see what's happening. So that's where I come from. The rest of the board can always vote me down if they feel that what I'm proposing is incorrect. And town meeting, of course, is the ultimate decider. So.
Can you pull up the plan and just point out what parcel she's referring to, please?
Should this be part of the deliberation?
I just wanted to see it, and we can just, I didn't catch the address.
People should be reminded, because more people came in, we're deliberating this evening, correct?
We are deliberating this evening after this is done, so we have to, I forgot when we're supposed to end the hearing.
There you go. These two, right?
1445,
1440.
What's that big street, Brian?
This one?
That's Main?
Yes, this is Main and this is Water. I believe your parcels are 1445.
1446 and 14.
Yeah, so
Yes.
1446 is here and 1445 is the one that's split.
What's actually on 1448? The corner, the actual corner, what's there?
That's where, there's a building there, it has a veterinary place.
Okay, got
It's-
it, okay.
All connected.
Okay, let's see, we have, after this one, we have 2 more articles, so I think we still have time for a couple more comments on this article. Does anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment, please. Ben Albiani. I have a couple of properties that are involved in this area. One is 18 to 20 Clark Street, which is, you guys are down zoning. We're proposing a down zone. There are certain properties, as you said, you went and looked at each property as an individual, and so do some developers, believe it or not. I know you don't all believe that, but that is the case. I own 828 Main Street as well, which is on the corner of Main and Salem, which we have converted into a nice-looking residential building with a first-floor office, which is where my office is, with 2 residential units above it. We also have done, which someone had mentioned earlier, we did down in the center, we did where Brugger's Bagels is and pairings and that sort of development. And then we also did Winchester Place, which has first-floor retail with second-floor residential, which I think is a pretty nice development that happened.
How many stories?
That's 3 stories. So you need to look at each property as its own entity. And you're not going to, the reason why you haven't had development, the way they made a plan, I thought the plan was in 1997, the rezoning, or what was in 2000, as you're telling me?
2000 was the rezone, yeah.
Right, so we purchased 18 to 20 Clark Street when you rezone that for the purpose of an opportunity to do a development there. Not necessarily saying anything about demolishing a house or anything like that, but in order to be able to use setbacks that were created by the planning board. I'm not sure if all of you guys were on it or if any of you were, but they were created, there was a study that was set up for that. Because people are not liking a development that is somewhat massive on North Main Street, which is happening, which has first floor retail, which is, people were saying that everything now is residential from the ground up. That's not what all developers are proposing. That's not the case. there are opportunities for North Main Street to improve. I can't do all of that myself because I don't own every property. No, you know, each developer has his own properties, but North Main Street, as you guys know, especially if living up around there, needs some sort of rehabilitation. You have a truck terminal, you have a bagel shop that's dilapidated, you have a used car terminal, there are certain properties that lend themselves to a development. And if you're changing the rezoning of this, those setbacks, you're bringing 15-foot setbacks to properties that then don't have the depth to do a proper development. You should take each entity as its own instead of blanketing, which you seem like you're hand-picking certain things. So I feel as if you looked at them closely, you'd see which properties need to be developed properly and not. And you could use commercial, there could be businesses, shops, revitalization of North Main Street that you guys are, by changing the zoning, you're hurting that opportunity for North Main Street to be developed. And that's all I'd like to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions on this article? Oh, thank you all. I think we will move on to Article 15.
So this is another zoning map change. This objective here is to change the zoning district of portions of 2 parcels so that the uses reflected are compatible with the Highland Ave development project as an alternative to a 24-unit 40B that was proposed to be at this location. The project that's addressed is or anything that's going on in these 2 specific parcels that are currently in the SCI. SCI stands for Schools, Conservation, and Institutional. It's essentially all town-owned land is zoned SCI. So if you ever see SCI, that just means we own it. So it's going from SCI to the RDB that would allow the 5-unit subdivision to occur. So the area in blue is what's currently owned by a private landowner. It's currently the entire parcel, everything in blue is zoned RDB 10. As portions of, I guess, negotiations after a 40B application was applied for between the select board, the planning, and the planning board, what was at the end of that negotiation, or really wishes of the select board slash planning board, where there would be 5 lots that would be for the on the private land, and that we would get this portion C, so that we could potentially put in 2 affordable units off of North Border Road. So the land swap that's occurring, it's a different article as part of town meeting, is actually the swapping of this land. What we're doing here is just rezoning portions of this town-owned land, A and B, where we're rezoning these 2 portions to be RDB, so that the land swap, once, if it does occur, can at least be zoned in the correct district. So this, I tried to make it a little darker, but I couldn't. But what the 2 lobes on each side of the property, they allow for this road to be built with a dead end, a hammerhead, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses would be located within this subdivision with just the small portions of the land that I showed here, just to accommodate the road, and then this other portions of of the hammerhead. You can see actually the outline of the hammerhead here, and the portions of that one. So this is the rough plan that was submitted, that will be also subject to town meeting as part of an actual land swap. So there will be a number of articles associated with this potential development project.
And subdivision control.
And that has nothing to do with town meeting. But so what would have to happen is, first the land swap would have to occur at town meeting. Then there would have to be the zoning change. That's the only thing we're involved with. And then after that, they would have to go through subdivision in order to actually build this. So it's far from over. This has been 3 years in the making. This is one step that needs to happen in order for other articles that the select board and others are putting forward to make the development even close to possible. That is everything for Highland Ave.
Any questions? Come up, please. Questions or comments, I should say.
Well, I'm not
Hold on
exactly.
a sec, please, take a seat and give us your name. Gotta think those people out on TV land.
No problem. My name is Mike McCauley, and I live at 28 North Border Road. Where I live it's a small section of North Border Road, and I'm not sure if this has anything to do with this, but if you look at my house where the cursor was, right to the left of it is C, and that would be town-owned land, correct?
Yeah,
After the swap,
He
okay.
gets A and B, we
All
get
right.
C.
Now, the affordable houses that you want to put to the left of that, correct?
Here.
All right. Does this have anything to do with that, is my
No,
question? Okay.
This.
Will that be in another venue? Okay.
This article is simply rezoning A and B.
Yeah, right.
There's another article that's dealing with the land swap, which is because that deals with getting C. So I think that's probably the article that you might be more interested in. I don't know.
Well, my concern is that
Is the potential
the duplex at the
potential
end of the
duplex
street.
that's here?
Yes.
So the potential duplex that's there, there are no decisions at town meeting. No one's voting on that right now. It's for fall town meeting. It's the swapping of land,
Right.
setting up essentially setting up so that it makes this possible. As far as a potential duplex, there are no actual plans that we have. Meaning, there's nothing to vote on. That's kind of after any of this. If this all does move forward, then we would start pursuing that,
Okay.
or the select board would start pursuing that.
Well, so
I do a
that's,
point of clarification.
Please.
For Lot C, for that to be developed at a future date, that would have to go through town meetings approval.
okay.
So as of now, it is not, the thought is that it may be developed down the road, but as of now, there is no plans for that development, and it has to be approved by town meeting. Is that correct?
So that's not coming up at this particular town meeting, just this land swap?
Nothing to do, I mean, just this, as far as I know, it's the swap, meaning he gets A and B, we get C, and that it would, and then, so, yeah, it's the land swap and the zoning change, that's all that's happening.
Are these guys town meeting members?
Some
of them.
Some of them are.
Some are not.
Well, if I could just talk to you guys about this,
Please, if you could speak to the town meeting members outside of this venue, that would be great,
okay.
unless you want to,
Vote this down because it's a dead-end street and the cars won't fit down it.
thank you. Okay, so,
Here's what it looks like. They're gonna put a duplex here. This is my truck. This is the street right here during the
excuse me,
snow.
sir, excuse me,
After the
sir,
snowstorm.
you're taking time away from.
Like this all the time.
Roger Wilson, Precinct 1. I have a question here. What does SCI stand for?
Schools, conservation, and infrastructure.
Conservation.
I'm sorry, not infrastructure, institutional.
Yeah. So that little C, what's that currently? What's that zone currently?
That's currently part of his land.
Yeah, but what's it zoned? currently?
RDB 10. Everything in the blue is RDB 10.
Okay.
But there's only 64 feet there, frontage.
RDB 10 is.
Correct. There's only 64 feet.
So if you zone that little piece there, SCI,
We're not.
well, but you could, right?
Okay.
Sure.
Hypothetical, we could
Yeah,
limit SCI.
then I'm sort of interested in that middle part of SCI, conservation, because as far as I'm concerned, that's part of the fells.
Okay.
And so,
Which
and,
part,
and
can you clarify which part?
He's talking specifically about
C,
Okay, all right.
yeah, I mean, that's all part of the fells, part of the enjoyment of the fells currently. And you can, if you can rezone SCI to whatever,
RDB 10?
RDB 10, then you can also rezone RDB 10 to SCI.
So-
And then I might even support it.
Okay, I mean, so it's unclear exactly what's going to be happening on this land, but if there was going to be anything at the moment, it was the idea is that this would be access for a duplex that would be a 40B, meaning that it's both of them, so the zoning wouldn't matter, meaning that we wouldn't zone it to SCI and then build on SCI. That doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. So, yeah.
It's town-owned.
Maybe not to build. That's
It's
totally
town-owned.
different. Yeah, it's town-owned.
I think it's important when you look at this proposal and all of the proposals, you look at what the town is giving up and what the town is gaining, and you have to make a decision based on whether you think it's worth it to the town to do this land swap. So if you get 2 duplexes, you do get a replacement for the 1 unit, affordable unit we've lost at 22 Highland.
But you're building 2 there.
Excuse me? Keep in mind, those are the things on the table, so when you think about this, you have to weigh all of these different things that are happening. What's best for the town, what's best for the neighborhood, all of these things go into the same bucket. So, are there?
May I reapproach?
No, sir, if there's someone else.
I don't think there is, so.
Right, but we have to move on because we actually have to close this hearing and vote, and we only have until 9 o'clock to do so.
Can I just add one comment?
I'm sorry, sir. If it hasn't been brought up before.
Well, it hasn't, no.
Let him make his comment.
Okay,
I
come on
just want to say,
forward.
you just mentioned about losing.
Please come forward. You have to speak into the microphone.
I just want to say what he suggested is a very good idea. And
Is there something new you want to tell us?
Yes, there is. The duplex down at the bottom, or that single-family house you said you would be losing, that will be redeveloped as well. So you'll be getting 2 units there.
No.
Well, you're gonna put another duplex down there on Highland Ave.
No.
The town isn't?
No.
Come on, we've said it 7 times now. We're not building on that site.
Let's.
Okay, but you're
let's
building
be a
to
little
the
calm.
right of it, correct?
The
The
town,
only thing that's on the table even talking at all at the moment is a
Right.
duplex here.
Yeah,
That was the result of.
right, I understand that, yeah.
There's no plans that
there are no plans to
I've
build
seen.
anywhere on
This
this
is
site.
coming down. because
Right.
It's been.
But there's
up
gonna
for
be
several years.
but there's gonna be another duplex.
Nothing, I have no knowledge of anything that's going to take the place of 22 Highland.
But to the right of it?
No.
Nothing down here, nothing.
Can we?
Okay, I'm sorry then, I
Categorically,
misunderstood.
There
I'm
are
sorry.
no plans for development
Okay.
of the town land.
I misunderstood. I thought
Okay.
there was gonna be a duplex down there. I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay, so let's move on to the next article.
Article 16, so the objective here is to review projects which significantly increase the floor area. Sorry?
There was a mistake in the text as it was provided. So in the text you have in front of you, it's not changed.
No, it was, because there was.
Where it says 150%, that was supposed to be 50%. We had a misunderstanding of English.
So it's an additional 50%, which would be 150% of the original structure, not 150% on top of what it is, but we'll get there. So the objective here is, I'll get to it. I promise. It's just saying that what's in your packet says 150, but it should say 50. I'm going to explain it. Review. So it's to review projects which significantly increase the floor area by an addition. It's really difficult.
Excuse me, could we please keep the noise in the audience down? It's very difficult to speak up here.
The projects that are addressed by this change are any proposed structures or additions which result in an area greater than 50% of the existing floor area or a recently demolished house. So the background here is that we've seen additions of 2,000 square feet or more that are being built onto current structures. Such a large change has impacts to the abutting properties and many times are not reviewed for such impacts because they're not reaching the site plan review minimum square footages. So there are triggers, once you build a house or have an addition over a certain square footage, it triggers site plan review. There are some, the most recent cases where someone, they kept the house, turned that into the garage, and then built a whole main house on top of it rather than demolishing. It didn't reach the numbers for site plan review, but it was obviously a large change considering the house became the garage. So the idea here was that site plan review should be implemented for these larger changes in residential zones to mitigate any negative effects of the project. So this is the actual change of the bylaw, is in bold. So all it's saying is that just looking at number 4 here, it's saying that if you're in the RDA 20, if you have a floor area of 6,000 square feet or more, that triggers site plan review. That has not changed. But now it's also saying that if it's either 6,000 square feet or an increase in floor area of 50% or more. So it's a new trigger for site plan review in addition to the existing triggers. So we have 6,000 in the RDA, 5,000 square feet in the RDB, and 3,600 square feet in the RG. So it's a new trigger for review. And this is all we have for this article.
I have a couple of points I want to make. First off, this is site plan review. This is not special permit. Site plan review, we cannot deny an application. The ZBA can put what is called reasonable conditions on it. So this is not something where you come up and we say, no, you can't do that. The other thing I wanted to point out is this particular part of the zoning is zoning which has to do, or what I should say is what led to this was that the particular part of the zoning that was used for this turning the house into a garage and then building a 4,000 square foot house on top of that was using a part of the zoning which was to provide relief to owners of properties which are non-conforming so that they would be able to add onto their properties without having to go through review. And so it was designed to provide relief to homeowners. It wasn't designed to essentially circumvent some of the other, good zoning, I guess, is how I would put it. In any case, so that's all I have to say. Are there...
Could I just ask a question so we're all on the same page?
Okay.
How many houses are excluded from that in the town, Brian? Are those all the residential districts, those 3?
There is an RDC that's a small portion of town that is not included in this change.
Yeah. Any questions? If you have a statement, please come forward.
Can I just ask for clarification?
Sure.
So, if I'm understanding this, so for...
It's really hard to hear you. Could you please come forward?
Yeah. And not only that, we want to make sure, it's a public meeting, we want to make sure that everybody can hear what you have to say.
I'm just trying to understand it, sorry.
Sure.
Catherine Hughes. So if I understand this correctly, notwithstanding the fact that we already have stipulation that you can't build a house larger than 5,000 square feet, in addition to that?
Right. You can build a house larger than 5,000 square feet. It just comes under site plan review. It cannot be denied, but the ZBA can put on what are called reasonable conditions. So you can certainly build a house that large. It just has to go under review.
So what this change to the article then stipulates is that if I want to increase my house by 50% or more, or I want it to expand it to be 5,000 square feet or more, I now have to submit a site plan?
You go through a site plan review, yes.
So that's what this is?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
So
the
I'm
5,000 is
trying-
already there. The addition is
Right.
just the 50%.
Right. Just
So
trying
that
to
means that
understand
if you
it.
have a 2,000 square foot home and you want to increase it to 3,000 square feet, it would come under site plan review.
Right, okay, I got it. Thank you.
And okay.
So, just one quick comment. I understand, I'm gonna say who I am again, John Miller.
Wait till you're seated, please. Thank you.
John Miller. earlier, when we were going through these changes, you proposed adding a paragraph 12 to site plan review, and I commented about that. I think that's the most troublesome of all the changes that you've proposed. This is the flip side of the same issue. So what you just told Catherine Hughes was that there's no way to stop that. In other words, you have a right to, it's just a formal process going through site plan review. But if under Article 11, you add a new paragraph 12 as one of the conditions, that during site review, you demonstrate to the zoning board that you've minimized any other adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. Now it seems to me you've opened up a lot of subjective questions, and you're putting owners of homes into a position where they're not sure that they can make plans and reliably proceed with what they want to do with their own property. So I would think that, I get this, I think it's maybe okay, but I don't think you should add, this goes back to Article 11, I don't think you should change 11 and make this change. The two together, I think, are too far.
Okay, I just want to point out that the language, minimize adverse impacts, is actually found in special permits as well. So although people think that the language is vague, it's actually been in use in this town for decades, as far as I know.
So you've just proven my point that we don't need to add it.
No, this is a separate section. That was for special permits.
Okay, we don't need to add it.
No, these are site plan review. It's a different process. And so the point you raise is that it is language which is vague and subjective. And all I'm pointing out is that the zoning bylaws already includes that language. So, and it has been used effectively, at least as far as the planning board and hopefully the ZBA is concerned. So I don't know if that alleviates your fear, but I just want to point out that it is existing language which has been used. I don't know if it's standard in the industry.
Now you're confusing me. So you're telling me that site plan review is different from the other?
Special permit,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And you're telling me that language has been used very successfully in some other situation?
Mhm.
Okay, so,
I'm merely-
and how does that,
You made a statement that the words adverse impact are vague. You went back to Article 11 and you talked about minimize adverse impacts.
Effects, adverse effects.
I'm sorry, adverse effects. And you said that the language was vague and was essentially a catch-all. And what I'm pointing out to you is that language is already in use in other parts of the zoning bylaw, and that concept has been used successfully and hopefully effectively by the ZBA. And so this is not a new concept in terms of zoning laws.
so if it's not a new concept and it
Yes.
has no effect,
I
then there's
didn't
no
say it
reason to
has no
change it.
effect. I didn't
So
s-
then why is it,
I'm sorry,
to me, it's a circular argument, is
I
what
don't
I'm
see
saying.
it circular at all.
It's circular to me.
Well, then we will agree to disagree. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this article?
It's two different glasses. Your glasses.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller, your glasses.
Well,
You might as well just, we could leave them up.
I should sit down before I pick them up. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Conti, and I think that's going to have to be the last comment on this because we are running out of time.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You indicated that if a house, a 2,000-foot house were increased to 3,000 square feet, it would be subject to site plan review.
Under this, yes.
That's not a 150% increase.
No, that's why we explained that there was an English problem when we wrote this, and we wanted to say 50% increase. The original language was 150% of the original area. So that is a 50% increase.
I see.
But the language was changed to make it, to make it fit the existing format of the bylaws, and when that language was changed, we got our English backwards, and it should have been a 50% increase. That was always the original.
Well, I want to point out then to the visiting, not so much to this board, but to those residents who are listening in or watching this proceeding, that the effect of this would be, again, There's been a lot of reconstructions in my precinct, and this would greatly increase the cost of expanding a house. If you're going to change a 2,000 square foot house to 3,000 square feet, and that's going to subject you to site plan review, which means, hearings, going through a process with the Board of Appeals. That's an expensive proposition for a homeowner to have to go through. And I don't see the necessity of it. It's just going to increase costs and discourage people from rehabilitating their properties. So I think that's a reason for opposing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have a time restraint. I think it's just the hearing until 9. I don't know why we would not be able to deliberate after 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, I know, because I misread the agenda. I apologize.
I don't think we need to power through till...
No, we can, I think...
No, it will.
It
But
will.
I'm saying we don't need to do it in 12 minutes.
No, we don't. But we have until 9:15, and I misread it, so. But I think, is there anyone else who wants to speak on this? Then I think we're done. That was the last article for discussion. I thank you all very much for coming. It's-
Hang on, they should understand, we're going to make our votes. Everybody wants to
Yes, I
say
do,
public
but
only.
I do want to thank them before we close the public hearing and urge you to stay for our discussion. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
This one is roll call, so that's 4-0.
Aye. Great.
Okay,
Wait for people. Would you want to take a minute?
yeah, so why don't we take a minute?
Well, I think they're going to sit and listen.
We want to give people a couple minutes to get all of this conversation out of your system. And then,
So,
Just take a 2-minute
can you just clarify that we will be discussing these?
yeah, so we will be discussing this
2-minute break
further,
and then we'll go.
and then we will be voting as a board whether to put this on the town meeting warrant. And that will happen in a couple minutes. So we're officially
I'm going
not.
to take a
We're taking a 2-minute
camera,
break.
2-minute break.
2-minute break. So we will be back at 9. Back in session after our 2-minute break. And we are live. Thank you, WinCam. And I'll note that once more, I have messed up the schedule. So actually, we were supposed to end at 9 and have district commission appointments at 9. So there's no way we're going to finish our discussion about these articles by 9
At 9 we
o'clock.
can, but I mean, we do have one person
Right.
here who maybe want to
Right.
leave
So-
or
Yes. So my suggestion would be
Go ahead and.
quick an appointment.
that at 9 o'clock, we break, we do an appointment, because as was pointed out, the other people may be coming up because they were expecting that they would have their appointments done at 9, so.
We
we
know
have-
one of them can't make it, so we'll find out.
Okay.
Okay, okay, so why don't we start at least until 9 o'clock, we can go through some of the articles,
Okay.
just to make sure.
This is on you.
Okay, so we're just gonna go through the articles one at a time. The board will, someone on the board will make a motion or against, and we're gonna vote to put it forward for town meeting. We've had a previous discussion where we have stated that if the board votes 4-1, we would bring it forward. If the board votes 3-2, that's a sign that the board is not near consensus, and so that we would not go forward on any of these articles. So, let's start with Article 8.
I'm going to move for favorable action. I think it doesn't need any deliberation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so,
Just next time, we say, Article 8 is changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
Oh,
Let's
I'm
just
sorry.
say what the article
okay,
is.
Article 8 is
What's the
changing.
short version?
Short, yeah, the shortest version possible.
Okay. Article 9 is to add definitions of dormer and skylight, and to put some constraints on the size of, or to require dormers exceeding 50% of the width of the roof to go through a special permit process. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move approval?
Okay, we have a move and approval. Is there a second?
Put it on
To put it on the warrant.
Put it on the warrant?
I'll
Do we-
second it.
We have a second. We have time for discussion.
I would like to discuss it.
Okay. Why don't we set some timelines?
Yeah.
Well, this one, since we're going to break at 9, why don't we, I'll give you 3 minutes and then see if we can get to a vote. Is that enough time?
Well, I had hypothetical questions that I'd like.
Okay, well,
So when the planning board first brought the dormers up to me in the meeting, I had very similar feelings that were expressed in the hearing of concern of it hindering development of the smaller homes. And so I actually worked on this thereafter to make sure that it did not halt growth and development and rehab of those buildings, because they can still go forward with dormers that are larger, they just have to go under review.
That was my reaction.
And so that is why I felt comfortable going forward with this, but I was hesitant for the same reasons voiced. And I want to make sure that, that my fellow planning board members, that you feel similar, that we're not hindering people from expanding into, but the main goal is that if you're going to build a house that appears 3 stories, that you are going under a review, because we are not a 3-story residential town. We are a 2.5-story. And the other comment that it wasn't made, Brian, in your presentation, is we are a 40-foot high by right town. Most towns on our surrounding are 35-foot by right. And so either, we have a couple options, either go the route of this dormers or reduce the height of all the residential homes in town by 5 feet.
It should be in the presentation at town meeting.
And I think at this point, the planning board is not interested in reducing the height of the houses to 35 feet by right, maintaining that 40 feet by right, but doing things similar to the dormers. So if you are going to go in that high at 40 feet, that you are going under review. Is that currently all the opinions of the planning board at this time? Okay, I'm ready to vote.
We have the motion.
with the motion,
And a second.
we have a second, we have discussion. Let's vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? And I have to admit, we're now actually in unknown territories, because I said that we would, if it were 4-1 or 3-2, and it turns out we only have 4 people here. So we can't do 4-1 or 3-2. So the board will have to decide. I know in one particular one, there will be contention, whether we go ahead with a 3-1 vote.
Well, let's get there on it.
Okay, we'll get there when we get there. Well, we are just shy of 9 o'clock. We have 2 minutes.
Let's do 10.
I think we can do 10.
Okay, let's do 10. See if the town will vote to amend section 3, table of use regulations, to delete all references to attached. And
before we even get into that, I would want to make an amendment, because based upon a comment, it does seem quite clear that this language could be much more far-reaching than,
Just the section that was referenced. Do you want the section number?
well, it's really as it's referred to attached dwelling. So anytime that the word attached dwelling is
So
it's
essentially-
the word attached should be deleted.
So what we should do is change references to attached dwelling to dwelling. So
Yes.
that- Okay. Change references to attached,
Or from attached dwelling to dwelling.
right, from attached dwelling
'Cause
to,
that was always the intention,
That was always-
and so I'll
Okay.
say that again, is to see if the town will vote to amend section 3, table of use regulations, group 1, residential uses number 3, by changing all references from attached dwelling to dwelling, or any other action in relation thereto.
okay, so I think that does clarify it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Make a motion to approve as amended, or rather to move this forward as amended to the town meeting warrant.
Second.
Okay, do we have discussion? Nope, all in favor?
Aye.
So I think that was 4-0. And let's pretend
take a
it's 9 o'clock. My clock says 20:59, but that's close enough. So we're going to take a slight break from our discussion here, and we're going to move to Heritage District Commission appointments.
Well, formally, just keep going.
We're not in public hearing, so
Right.
we can.
You're right. Go.
We can go wild and free. So we have 2 appointments to the Heritage District Commission and 1 appointment to the Design Review Committee. So,
She's not here tonight,
okay, so Colleen McInnes is not here. We do have.
but the other two are.
But we can still,
We can still appoint her.
Yeah,
so can I make a motion to appoint Colleen?
Yeah. Typically, and this is usually, and then we have kind of done it different ways, but over most of the period of time, we've invited the applicant to the table.
That's exactly what I was going to do.
Well, I was just gonna,
Well, she's not
Colleen's
here.
not here, so I was just gonna make a motion to
Well, why-
appoint Colleen.
As long as we're sure that that's
Why
what
don't, why don't we get the people who are physically here first?
Okay,
Just because
cleaning it
they're
up.
here. And so why don't we, if Christine Schmidt could please come forward?
How are you?
Please take a seat at the microphone so the rest of the town can hear you.
Good evening.
And you must be Christine Schmidt because
I
I called you
am.
forward, so you don't have to come first. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to, are you on the commission as a, are you currently on the commission?
I'm currently on the commission. I'm the chair. I have been for the past 3 years. And we've been around a little bit longer than that as we were forming. I'm one of the property owners within the district. And I've been in Winchester about 20 years now. Always in the same residence, love the neighborhood. And this is some, small way to give back to a great place to live.
Thank you. Does the board have anything they wanted to ask the applicant about?
sounds like all the right reasons to me.
Boy, that sounds so formal here. Okay, well, do we have a motion to appoint Ms. Schmidt?
I'll make a motion to appoint Christine Schmidt to the Heritage District Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy, how long is your
Thank you.
appointment for?
3 years. Another 3.
Another 3 years?
Another 3?
Enjoy your next 3 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have an applicant for the Design Review Committee.
That's renewal.
Renewal, yeah.
Renewal.
Yes.
Renewal.
Hi, Ellen Spencer.
Hello.
I'm a current member, well, actually, I'm not, until you reappoint me.
So how long have you been on, had you been on the Design Review Committee
I
prior to this brief lapse?
Cannot remember, it's been a while, probably, I don't know.
Three up, it's 9,
I think it's like, this will be, I think this is,
3 or 4.
I've done 3, I think, already.
Yeah, I think this is 4.
Are you sure you want to go, Fed?
I was on the historical commission also.
Well, years and years ago. Yeah, so I've been on it for, I think, 9 years, and we do a rotating chairmanship, so I'm not currently chair, but I have been. so.
It's a lot of fun.
Being chair.
Being chair, yeah. Anyone have any questions or statements?
Well, I know this is often an opportunity to talk, and probably we'll want to come back later, but we have been talking about the way the CBD review has been working, and I know maybe, again, it's for another time. But
You mean
maybe
ZBA?
The Center
CBRS.
Business.
Oh, CBD. Sorry, I thought I heard
The
Z.
review process is working, and I know that there's been some issues coming up.
Yeah.
So if you want to just, this is your chance to speak to the board and just say something, but I don't think you want to spend very much.
Well, I think,
We're going to have a.
I think that you've got enough on your plate tonight.
I think that's.
But
that's
yes, you're
something-
right, and one of the things that's been great in the last year or so is, these periodic, meetings with planning board and also
We're due for
with
another one, so.
with
Yes,
ZBA and all of that. So, I'll just say quickly that, I think the whole process it's changed a lot since I for the better, since I started on DRC, in terms of just kind of understanding what it is we can do and can't do, and formalizing the role. This is so thanks to the planning board. So I think in many ways it functions a lot more effectively than it once did, and I find it endlessly interesting.
Good. Thank you very much.
So we're
Did
gonna
we vote already?
No.
Oh, we did vote. Do we have a motion?
I think he's tired.
That's okay. Okay, move that we continue the appointment of Ellen Spencer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. And now, in absentia, we can discuss Colleen McInnes.
I make a motion to appoint Colleen McGinnis for the Heritage District Commission. She is the architect on the commission.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
She's a very valued member of the Heritage District Commission.
Yep.
Since she can't be here, I feel like I gotta say something.
I really appreciate all of their service.
All
It would have affected the vote maybe if you had said it earlier, so we should let you speak.
I think it is important to point out that the people who deal with these committees, or commissions and committees, are just of immense help to the planning board and the ZBA as well, and we certainly appreciate their efforts.
It is amazing the volunteer level in this town. So.
And my brother thinks I'm crazy.
But you thought you were crazy.
I didn't say I disputed that. Okay, so we're going to get back to our discussion or voting on the zoning bylaw potential articles. We're now on Article 11, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 957 of the zoning bylaw to add a new subsection number 12 as follows: minimize any other adverse effects on the town or the neighborhood. And I just want to summarize the testimony we've heard this evening, which is, I think we had two people come forward, at least two people. Yeah. Too subjective, the wording is too subjective. It's broad, it could replace all of the other guidelines which it follows. And it's too ambiguous. And so those are the statements from the public on that.
The last comment was that it puts property owners at risk for doing any type of addition on their home.
Okay.
Was the last comment.
Okay, I have that under a separate one, but okay, yes. Okay, so typically we ask for a motion and then we discuss the motion.
I'll move approval for discussion purposes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay, so it's open for discussion.
Do you want me to start again?
If you wish.
So, some of the background of why this came up.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
You can give me my 3 minutes.
Okay, if everyone is, we'll just stick all comments to 3 minutes.
Some of the background that was not brought up is that this was brought to the attention from the ZBA to the planning board and some of the residents also, because what was going on is that the adverse effect on historic resource was being picked up, but those who are not in historic neighborhoods were not being picked up in the same manner and they wanted to be, and the ZBA didn't have a mechanism to pick up the neighborhoods. So there are some newer neighborhoods that have development going on that are incredibly evasive. And so the ZBA said they had no mechanism and recommended something of this impact, and the residents requested, residents requested it. The language was changed, was supported in its written form by town council. I still understand why they're questioning the ambiguity of, I don't think I pronounced that word right, but why they're questioning it, and I'm not sure how we can make it so it is tighter to the way that the ZBA is asking it, and the residents who are not in historic neighborhoods or in historic resources can get what they need out of our zoning without it keeping it that way. But if anyone has any recommendations or ideas, I'd love to hear them. I know, Brian, you weren't there.
Yeah, and it obviously changed from the last time, but I think the way that this is going, I thought, yes, it was definitely due to ZBA as well as residents and applicants that brought this, because there was the ambiguity of it was the fact of this first one. So this is a big catch-all already. Minimize unreasonable departure from the character, materials, and scale of the buildings in the vicinity. This is the problem. As viewed from public ways and places. So what the problem was that a rear neighbor essentially wasn't given as much weight as the neighbor across the street, because that was from a public way, whereas the rear neighbor, who might be the only person affected because the addition is in the back, and let's say they're the only one affected, the ZBA, rightfully so, because this is the words that are in the bylaw, it specifically says, as viewed from public ways and places. So a change that could potentially do that is get rid of this, minimize any other, because really the other is unreasonable departure from the character, materials, and scale of the building. That's essentially what we're talking about. So why not say as viewed, just not say as viewed from public ways and places?
Just strike that.
And just strike this. And
I would be for that.
I think that
I'm much more
covers
comfortable
it.
for that.
That's actually a really good,
Thank you, Brian.
thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
We know you're here for a reason.
It's unfortunate you weren't here in our last meeting, but I feel much better with that, and that's what the bigger issue is.
I thought the only issue was public ways.
It is the public
It's the
ways,
public ways.
because it was limiting.
And I apologize that that didn't come out in our earlier presentation, because it was certainly part of our discussion about this.
So
Okay.
that's my recommendation, is to strike through as viewed from public ways and places. The question now before us is whether or not legal counsel would think that's okay, whether it's it's in the spirit of what was portrayed in the hearing notice. It's a weird.
I think we gotta leave that,
Just
turn it up
it's
to
a question
them.
for legal counsel. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
We can still make a motion and contingent upon legal counsel accepting it.
Yes, of
Yes.
course.
Okay.
There might be a motion, though, after that, is if they don't.
Okay, so we'll have to come up with the flow chart. So let's start with, so let's create this motion. So, let's create the new line. Well, the motion would be to,
Amend section 9.5.7, subsection number 1, to delete the words "as viewed from public ways and places."
Correct. So I'll second that.
well, wait, let me, I'd like to get the whole thing. What
Well,
happens?
it's 9.5.7, that's all you really need, subsection.
No, you're not getting my point. I'd like us to move, I'd like us to have a motion which takes
Here,
into
I will do it.
account what, if town council agrees or town council disagrees.
No.
So we get it all in one motion.
It's to see if the town, I make a motion to see if the town will vote to amend section 9.5.7 of the Winchester zoning.
Subsection 1.
I'm not there yet. Winchester zoning bylaw by amending subsection number 1 by deleting as viewed from the public ways and places, dependent upon legal counsel's findings as an acceptable change.
Well, I'd say contingent upon.
Look, that's fine.
But we still need to handle the case, what happens if he doesn't approve?
That's a second motion. I just think we
I
have.
think it does have to be 2.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get that first one, Liz? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the motion as put forward, did we have a
Second?
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Also, there is a motion sitting on still on the table that we were discussing.
Oh. Which motion is that?
The motion to
Oh,
accept.
to move this forward.
Yes,
So that should hopefully fail.
yes.
Well, okay, so.
We haven't voted.
We haven't voted, so just because my brain is all
That's
fogged up
okay.
right now. If we choose, if legal counsel, town council says this is not an appropriate rewriting of this particular article, do we want to move forward with the article as written?
No, I do not.
I would be comfortable with persuading.
Yeah, exactly, because if for some reason that is the case, we can always, I mean, even on the floor of the meeting, we can say, fine, we've moved to, take this motion off.
But it wouldn't even go forward.
No, yeah, I think it
Wouldn't
wouldn't
go
be,
into
it
the
would get deleted off the warrant, is
It
the
would get
reason.
deleted off the warrant.
Right.
Okay, so,
I recommend, from my perspective, that we delete it from the warrant,
If legal counsel
if legal counsel
disapproves of the change.
disapproves of our change.
Second that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Liz, did you get that?
deleted from the warrant.
If legal counsel does not approve of the previous language, or the
Of
amended
the- of the
language.
amended.
Okay. Thank you. It was less difficult than I feared. Article 12. So Article 12 is to see if the town will vote to amend the definition of parking space, et cetera, by changing by saying, having a width of not less than 9 feet and an area of not less than 171 square feet. Replacing the previous 200 square feet with 171 square feet. Is there a motion on the floor or on the table?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
So for 13, I want to propose we have some discussion before we can discuss.
Mhm.
Of course.
Sure.
I just want to point out, because I think it was.
I'd like to set some time limits on our discussion.
Sure,
if possible.
So.
Let's set some time limits. So do we want to, is 3 minutes sufficient for everyone?
I'll take 3.
Okay.
At some point, it will turn into dialogue, though, I think. Anyway, I just want to remind everybody, this is what the PUDs look like. They're extremely large, and so if the point here is some of the people have noted that we have plenty of opportunity to redevelop in the center, that in the PUDs, as far as the height goes, that the permit granting authority may authorize additional height outside the special permit standards. So we can actually go even taller in the PUDs. And as far as FAR goes, same thing. The SPGA may authorize additional FAR that exceeds the special permit. So it's really a huge amount of the town center and a very large chunk of the East Ford already, not to mention North Main Street, which is enormous. So I just don't see any reason to do what I see as potential damage to the historic resources in the town center. It's not going to present us with any more commercial, which was one argument. It's going to add residential. If anybody's counting in terms of 40B stuff, these are going to be small additions. They won't hit the 6, they'll deliberately, in fact, avoid the 6-unit target. So we won't get affordable units. And for anybody caring about 40B, we'll actually be adding units without even catching up. So we're actually going to get further behind, which is what happened like in the Kruger's Bagel complex. So we just ended up with more units and no affordables. So I don't see there's any additional affordable. It's not commercial. It is definitely not in keeping with the Lexington, Concord, Belmont, all those pretty town centers, and just adds these half stories. So I would hope that you guys could hear there will be other people who will speak against it, people who are very concerned about the historic core of this town center.
Does anyone else want to?
Can I just ask a question before we speak? Brian, what is the trigger to qualify for a PUD?
It's
What size, what is the trigger to go under the PUD?
It's
Can you give me the-
7.3.14.5 contiguous lots may be assembled, and they're within the boundaries.
So you have to join lots to do it, to qualify under the PUD.
I don't, Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you have to join lots. I mean,
Oh, it says may be assembled.
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any triggers. I think it's someone saying, I want to build in the PUD, which means that they're going to have to adhere to the guidelines to an even higher degree if they're going to be allowed to go higher than what's allowed. So all that's saying is that this is a district that, or this is an area, a PUD, planned unit development. It's an area that we've designated as, that should be intense development.
Right, right.
So that it's really just designating specific areas. There's no trigger necessarily for it.
Okay. And I have I just have a couple more questions for Brian, but the Locatelli building that can go up to 3 stories by right because it had a historical, but it has to be restored back to its original design.
Yeah,
Not the Locatelli, the Old Town Hall, I'm sorry. The Old
Lyceum.
Town, Lyceum.
Lyceum building.
Right, so all that's,
Yeah, that can be redeveloped.
that can be,
Right.
yeah, it can get a 3rd story on, well, not redeveloped, it can get a 3rd story
It has to
on
be
top.
restored.
Yeah,
It has to be restored, though, which was not a 3rd story. It was a huge pediment, right? It was,
Well, it's.
The way it says is that-
It's actually their photographs, there are full 3 stories that when it was shingle
And-
style,
yeah.
before it was the Gothic revival.
they can go to either version.
Yeah, no, it's changed.
the idea is that they would be able to, they would go up to a 3rd, they would be able to go out, to go up to that 3rd story, fill up the entire 3rd floor by right with, without a special permit because they're not demolishing and they're restoring the building.
Right. So between that plus that other PUD, there's a huge amount of reconstruction that can go on with this floor. I just don't want to hurt the town center, that's awful.
I'm sorry, there's that, she brought up a point, and I just want to go through it before I. Are you able to pull up the zoning and show me the historical buildings in red? I don't have it in color in my book.
It's 7-27. Is it page?
Oops.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's essentially this whole area.
I think the green doesn't even fully give you the sense of around the mill pond, that entire, imagine that whole thing, that entire parcel is green.
Right, so this is why this was the PUD.
Right, and then it really doesn't give you the sense that the Lyceum could take that extra
So the
story.
Lyceum is
So, I mean,
here.
there's hardly anything, the public safety building, so, but it's these red buildings that are, I don't know that anything would really happen.
This one is, that's a 1-story that could
That's one
easily.
we could take it, right, that's probably the only one that but even that can go to, what, to a point, what is it?
1.5.
But with a special permit, it can go more than that already.
Right now it can go to 2.5.
Right, 2.5, so I mean, what are we losing? I mean, so that's the little dinky piece.
We can get to the general discussion after everyone's had their say. Did you want to say something, or just?
I see Maureen's point on the PUDs. So if there is no minimum requirement for any of those buildings, and that's a big section of the east core.
It's a chunk.
We do not want 3-story buildings on Thompson Street. The 2 buildings, which is Winchester Place, are already taller than that, as is, if I remember correctly from your chart. The building that is on the river, where the real estate company is on the 1st floor, and I think it's all businesses, that's already taller than the 3 stories, correct?
Which one?
So,
Where are you talking about?
on the waterway, the green building, one more over.
Oh, yeah, that's 3 stories.
That's already 3 stories.
Yeah.
And since the PUD picks up the big chunk in green at this point, the risk on Thompson Street outweighs what the impact of what it would do for those 2 buildings to take on extra stories.
just to make it clear to others, so Thompson Street, very classic, 2.5 stories, everyone loves Thompson Street.
Very narrow, too.
So just, yeah, again, to clear, so you're saying that the potential risk, because you think of these buildings, which everyone at this table does want to preserve, at least the scale of those buildings, without a doubt, that it would invite too much redevelopment. So you're saying tear downs, or just kind of like messing up, kind of just messing up what's there?
They're messing up.
Whether it's through demolition or otherwise.
It encourages the messing of scale in places we do not want the scale messed with. I went to town meeting as the chair of the historical commission, and I said, and I specifically mentioned the 2 buildings in this area, in the East Core, that can take a 3rd floor. However, to go to that 3rd floor, that puts a lot of other buildings at risk. And the one thing I differ, I think, from Maureen, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, is I trust the planning board. Currently, the planning board is historically sensitive. It can shift down the road. I trust the voters that they will continue to put planning board members at the seat who support the downtown historical resources. But the PUD, the areas in green and the focus areas, I think it's not worth it on Thompson Street. It scares me a little bit to do that, and I am changing my perspective on it.
Okay. Betsy, do you want to give us 3 minutes?
I'm contemplating.
Okay, well, I'll give my 3 minutes. Let's see. So in my mind, this really comes down to, do we trust that the zoning bylaws have enough protection for the historical buildings in order to accommodate this? And I am concerned about Thompson Street. I know we discussed the impacts on Thompson Street when we have discussed them in the past. I have heard that that very tall building next to the pond, right off of Converse Place, whatever that's called.
Mill Pond Building, laundry building.
I've heard that it's so well constructed that no one in their right mind would pay the money to tear it down.
I've heard that too.
And so that, in my mind, and since that is part of the PUD, it seems that.
Could be incorporated.
It can be
They would
incorporated
have
in
to
other-
incorporate the building, which I would admire the architect who was able to do that and do it well.
But they can put other buildings on that site.
Yes, they could. I have to admit, I am concerned about Thompson Street. However, I do feel that the zoning bylaws are sufficiently strong. I mean, we do have bylaws and guidelines, as we've discussed on this board. The guidelines, is this working? The guidelines are things that are changeable just by the planning board. The zoning bylaws require town meeting.
That's right, 2/3 vote.
So, I personally feel that there are enough protections. I do not want Thompson Street turned into some modern downtownish thing, but I trust that this board, the bylaws, and town meeting, and the voters will keep us all on the straight and narrow. So,
I agree.
so,
Can I say one more thing?
sure.
I wasn't also
You
very
can
clear,
have
because
mine.
I said that I agree that the rules and regs are strong enough, and the zoning. The issue I actually have is that the delivery and the expectation are not going to align. So developers are going to come in, see that they can go for a special permit for 2.75. They're going to go through the process of designing, and they're going to come before us, and they're always going to get shot down. So I really don't think that's fair to any of the applicants. They are never going to make it through on that area of town with
In Thompson Street.
On
If someone
Thompson
comes in
Street.
on Thompson for a 275.
It's very, and like looking at the design guidelines to even do it on the two buildings, the 2 historical buildings, they have to come in with amazing architecture to meet the requirements of the rules and regs and it's only for those 2 buildings. The rest of them, they will not qualify under the design to even go up to those heights.
So, you would rather provide a very bright line for the developers so that they, in a sense, they don't.
Get incentivized.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I completely see that point. I would also hope that developers would be reading the regs and the bylaws to see whether what they were doing was possible.
We hope.
We
But
hope.
that I do not trust. So,
No, well.
Present
we have-
company excluded, but we have had experience.
where they're not reading.
I know, we're often, we have had developers come in and really try to push the envelope.
Okay. Does
They
it,
certainly will apply to the maximum. The one before us at the moment, it's at 2.5, they're at 2.48, 2.49.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the max.
okay.
And so, if there's a different way to do this, then maybe we should look into that, but at this point, I don't think the way we're going about it
And
is
again, I'm-
clear of what our expectations and the delivery we want is.
And again, please tell me if what I'm saying, I'm putting words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm wrong, but essentially you think there's only a 2 to 4 buildings that this would totally make sense for, but you're risking 16 buildings to get a potential 3 or 4 building, like a nice project on these 3 or 4 buildings. Is that the general argument?
Yeah, because most of the buildings in green are already over 3 stories that are not in the PUD, that can take on the height, already there.
Okay, does everyone feel like their opinion has been heard?
We'll make a motion then to, I guess you'd say table or push, not.
IP, indefinitely postpone.
Indefinitely.
But if it's not going on the warrant at all,
Oh yeah, this is to get, you would say to not put it on the warrant, is what you would say.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Remove it from the
Do
warrant.
not put it on the
Remove it
warrant.
from the warrant.
okay? Do we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Wow, whoa. Constitutional challenge avoided. We didn't have to worry about 4-1.
That was a 4-0
That was a 4-0.
for not putting it on.
Not for me.
I am happy at any time if you want to find other ways, but
I would thank the board for their incredibly persuasive arguments. Well put. And of course, I thank the public for commenting. Where the heck are we now?
We are at 14,
We're on Article 14. This is to see if the town will vote to amend the official zoning map of the town by rezoning certain parcels as shown on the following chart, which I cannot verbally describe. Picture is up there. So.
do you want me to, do you want me to start?
Sure, go right ahead. We'll put some time limits on this, because we
You
do
can,
have-
yeah, put a time limit on me, I'm
because we
fine.
have meeting minutes we must approve, because we have a open records request, so they have to
Okay.
be approved tonight.
Okay, so I am a resident of North Main as well. I am not on Canal Street. I'm actually on the other side of North Main. And I am a firm believer that it is time for us to rezone North Main. And everyone is confusing this with the center business district. They think this is zoned as a center business district with the same level of review. It's not. Changing these parcels at this point is, I think we have to do the rezone and then change the parcels at that point. I think, and I apologize because I was not embedded in this while you were working on it. I kind of came in and came out, Brian, but at this point, that is what I think no more. I've been asking for 2 years, can we please hire a consultant? Can we please start rezoning North Main and get it going so we don't end up what's being built right now on Main Street? And we deal with the parking situation, we deal with the road width, the traffic and the kids walking across Main is so scary right now. So at this point, I know I want the area around Canal rezoned. That is a narrow street. We got big issues going on in Canal, but I don't think just changing the lot is going to solve the problem. So at this point, I actually would like to table Article 14 rezone and go for a full rezone of North Main, of that whole area, to get the growth. It has not changed in many years, and what we have been getting has been not to the level that the residents want. and to push that and get that out and start doing it. And I know we're doing the master plan, we're doing this, but this, I think, needs to take a priority and is evident in a lot of the things we heard today. That's where I'm at.
So you would like to, just for clarity's sake, so you would prefer then to just, then essentially push this out to the spring, or?
No, I would like to table this and actually go for the rezone, the full entire rezone of North Main.
Very quickly, so our master plan consultant, Jennifer J.M. Goldson is our main consultant. She has several sub-consultants. RKG is the one doing economic development. They actually are having a focus group tomorrow. Economic development is there are basically three general areas of town that there's a lot of potential. The Center Business District, up GBD 2 and 3, and then some areas of the light industrial.
Yeah.
So as we go through this master plan process, one of the things that this board, as well as previous boards, have talked about is investment in Main Street. I've been trying to make it a goal of our master plan consultant to kind of find out, and this is going to take it's a long process, but to kind of figure out why there hasn't been significant investment along the Main Street corridor over the past 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there just hasn't been that investment that we've seen in other places of town. Mostly that's obviously because the single family home kind of dominates here, and that's where the money is. But there's not to say that there isn't potential, and so I see I think we are in the process, not necessarily of doing a full-blown out study of Main Street, but the economic development portion will take a serious look. And I've actually posed a very specific question: is why hasn't there been a lot of investment? The short answer is that it's small parcels. You got to conglomerate them. It's really hard. But I think there's more than that, because that just can't be the only way. Maybe it is a depth issue that came up this evening.
Yeah,
maybe
I want the answers
Maybe
before.
there isn't enough depth. I don't think that's necessarily the case in most of places. Most of the places it's actually much larger than 150 feet. Some places it's much smaller. I think that was one of the things that we found when we were going through it. It wasn't just a standard 150 feet all the way around. That's what it was billed as, but that's not how it actually ended up getting rezoned. Your point is that I certainly agree that it needs to be studied. We've talked about this for a while. The question or not is whether or not it makes sense to do this before or after. So I think you bring up a very good point.
I'm going to just throw out my concern, because I do not live on Canal Street, but there is substantial support for this, and that is the one larger redevelopment we know is going to go very quickly now I realize that there are other options here. One is if this is a huge issue for the resident on Water Street, that we exclude that. It seems as if that's become a real particular hurdle, and I don't know that I thought there was a logic, because I've seen, now that I understand where it is, I actually think when you turn the corner it does look residential, but I'm fine with, if that means we can go forward because of the impact on Canal Street, I would be interested in doing that, and certainly that doesn't prevent us from doing the more comprehensive study and understanding what else can go forward.
Personally, I would rather get rid of the whole thing than take.
Bring it forward.
Correct. Then
that
take
one
out.
Parcel, is that important?
No, not that it's that important. I don't think it's necessarily fair.
It's not fair.
Because there are many other parcels that are the same distance away from Main Street.
So the rationale was the distance from Main Street. That's the only.
No.
The rationale was what's on the ground.
Okay.
There are.
What's actually there. If it's been residential for 100 years, probably should be residential. Let
me fill in some of the background. So we know that there is at least one other property owner who wasn't able to make it here or in our previous hearing, who does not want their property rezoned.
Sakura property, the Sakura property or a different property?
No, the one right next to it. The one that was purchased. It is currently residential.
Scott Severs, it's a developer.
Right. So the point is that if we start to cherry pick which ones go in and out, I think that we have come up with a uniform. Now,
but is there another rationale?
Well, my point, my question, I mean, getting to Heather's point is whether we should delay this until we do.
Well, you've already put a
thorough
motion forward, haven't you?
No.
No, we're just discussing.
Sorry.
I said I would recommend, I didn't. put a
Yeah,
motion
it wasn't a
for
motion. My
I don't know.
concern
I need the
is
tables.
that we would, that any sort of zoning that came about through the master plan or anything coming with it would be several years away. And I would ask, would we look at these properties any different after that? We have, the concern that I have is that the building, the construction of large-scale buildings going down the side streets will happen.
Yeah.
We know that there is, that the developer wants to take the Sakura property and the one next to it and build several story tall residential unit. So in my mind, it's not really a conflict between commercial and residential, it's a conflict about the scale
I agree.
and how it changes the neighborhood. So what is the most important thing we're trying to do here?
Sakura is the,
It's the Japanese.
they just recited it?
They did, so we thought that they recited, so we thought, oh, they're obviously not moving forward, but they are.
They
So they recited it, and they bought the property next to it, and they're planning on doing it all residential. So it was confusing.
My concern is that, I mean, I have a strong feeling as to which way I want these neighborhoods to go.
Yeah.
And I think that there is an enormous amount of developmental pressure in that neighborhood. And I have seen lots which have been, I mean, if you go down Hemingway, you will see small lots where they took a small lot and they put a duplex on it with 4,000 square feet per unit. There is sufficient profit available to turn even what people think is the least desirable lot into something new. And my concern is that this neighborhood is getting hammered at the moment. And I do have, I will state, I live within, a couple hundred feet of many, many tear downs and rebuilds. My neighbor's house came down and a new one was built right next to me. So I just think these neighborhoods are at risk, and if we want to protect the neighborhoods, we need to do it now. And I appreciate the fact that we want to do comprehensive zoning. I just don't know that if we leave this out now, what we'll have left to protect.
Yeah, it's going fast.
No,
I guess
I
I
appreciate
will
it.
go on and say that the opportunities have shifted. Builders are working in parts of town now where they hadn't been before. Why? I think because, we still had those lots, for example, on the Upper West Side, there just was, and also it's just, Winchester's just hot. I think it should be good, but it's really, very concerning as well.
Yeah, I've had neighbors who live on really small lots. There are these beautiful single-family houses which are in really good shape, and they've been approached by developers who want to purchase it and tear it down, and they're on lots that are just barely legal in the zone. So it's a hot place.
The one thing that there's a couple points in the presentation you didn't make that we should also note, is that this is noted in the Triangle Master Plan, that this is something that has been on a to-do list for a while. And it wasn't talked about. The other side of it, which I had been feeling for a while, is that the other issue with this zoning area, it does not do what the CBD does, which the CBD requires those who are coming up against residential to downsize their buildings as they approach the residential. These don't. So you have that right on your property line, right up. I really want the planning board to move on this North Main. And I'm tired of keep saying, we're waiting. I just really think it's time to go and do this as a temporary, at this point, until we can come up with zoning that, really.
More nuanced,
But,
more-
yeah, I mean,
So what would be the proposal? I mean,
we bring in just what we did for the Center Business District. We analyze the properties, we find the historical, we document them, we see what.
So we would move any action until spring.
No, I think I understand where they're
I'm
going.
just trying to figure out where people are going.
At this point, I don't want the residential lots turned into parking lots.
Exactly.
I don't think that's ever going to come out of the zoning, that we should turn some of our residential lots into parking to offset. I think it's looking at Main Street and redesigning it. Canal and all those streets are so narrow, they cannot take the traffic safety at this point. You can't cross each other.
No, it's very.
So I'm okay with moving forward with this. I know that the residents themselves, not the developers are not in favor, but the residents are pretty strong about it.
Well, we do have one resident who isn't, just,
Who is it? Oh,
yeah.
you currently live there?
Yeah, she's on.
I sure do. I sure do.
So, can we move on there?
You know, the other point to bring up too is like, Brian, I looked at what the revenue that we get from the commercial entities versus residential, and it's actually less per, and that's not being discussed very often. So the commercial revenue that we are getting is minuscule. And for example, the hardware store is valued at $500,000 right now. So residential is bringing in more, although it depends on if they have children or not, which is offset through the school budget. So the revenue for these first floor commercial and the residential above and there is no right now qualifier for any affordable housing in there. No setbacks, no light. So yeah, go for it. I'll support it. Thank you for letting me talk it out.
Oh, you ran out of time, just in time. Is there a motion? Has everyone talked themselves out?
Oh, well, I just want to see one more time that parcel plural, where, because I know where it is, but I'm struggling, I guess, where.
The one on Water Street?
Water Street, yeah.
Actually, can we pull the street view up of that?
I know where it is, exactly. It's very
Do you know where the dentist's office is on?
Well, I know where it is.
I wanna see it.
I can see it on
Oh,
the
okay.
map, because I'm curious in terms of, you're using maybe a different logic from what I would use. So you're saying you're trying to, I appreciate it, there's got to be a rationale with any kind of zoning, but I'm not sure I would come up with exactly.
You said you wanted Water Street, or you wanted some?
I'm testing it. I'm not, yes, Water Street. That's perfect within satellite instead of yes.
You want to go to Street View? I'm just wondering
Yeah,
what
no,
you want.
that's good.
I want to see street view, please.
Oh,
Well, why don't we do one at a time? So when Maureen's done with hers,
No, I'm fine.
so this is the property right here.
Just the border.
That's a two-family
it's not like
historical
it's,
house, isn't it?
It's not like everything's square or, it's not like this thing's gonna be jagged anyway. So the actual limits of the GBD, the zone would be, if we're changing it, they're not gonna be smooth. So.
No, they'll follow parcel lines.
It can move around.
It's not quite smooth now.
Right.
No, it's beyond smooth now, but it certainly it would follow parcel lines, and obviously parcels can change over time. So, I mean, it could potentially just continue to
I'm
change.
fascinated that I offended somebody, with all due respect to saying I like the house, I do, but I guess I can see. What, I'm actually, in the vacuum, I would do exactly what's come before us, but I am wondering whether we scoot around it.
Why don't we go to the street?
Just because there is a parking lot across the street, and that whole site, I assume, will probably just go straight to some big giant thing eventually. I like the opticals, I actually go there now, these glasses came from the optical shop, and I don't know that that'll last forever, so that whole site may be rebuilt.
So it's not the two-family that I thought, it's the brown one.
It's the brown one, right?
Yeah. So the two lots, it's one lot here, and then this is the other lot's relatively vacant.
But it's not built on.
It's
Correct.
not.
No, it's just like, this
Correct.
is
You're correct.
how it,
And it's directly across from the parking
So
lot.
what would happen is, I'm wondering if we, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to go back and forth, swing back and forth between the zoning map and these little parcels and what I know so well on the ground, but if this whole area, both sides, gets to be commercial or large, frankly, it's not gonna go commercial, just for the audience, or for our board, remind everybody, it's gonna be apartment style, it'll be condos, because that's what the market's really bringing forward. So
So
I hate to see the house go, but maybe that's
Well,
acceptable.
The height limit here is 45 feet, so we're talking about a 3-story building. And we can go to Richardson Street and see what a 3-story building looks like, because there's one there. And it is, in my opinion, changes the neighborhood dramatically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
not
other
disagreeing.
hand,
But look,
Okay.
I mean, just do the Google, Street View, I'm sorry, Brian, would you just go around?
well, I mean,
I don't wanna
here's
see
a
the house
separate
go.
question for you.
But,
Is not the property right next to the parking lot more affected by the parking lot than the one across the street? I mean, there's certainly traffic on this road which affects this particular homeowner, she testified to that. But if we're, that property right there is much closer. Should we then say that that property should also be commercial?
well, actually, what I'm anticipating is this is all going to go to, the building next to John Lane, he took down Cutter Village and he
Yeah.
put up that big, that's the sort of thing I think is actually gonna be delivered, is on the larger parcels.
So I just,
That's not my personal
I think-
preference, but I'm trying to
right.
strike a balance
The-
between somebody who's spoken and what I
Yeah.
do see there, and I do know that pretty well, again, like, they're great, put in a pitch, they're, over there enough to, think they're, I could live with it.
I mean, I just think that if we're going to start,
No, I say we're evaluating first, the edges, it can't be, it's gotta be zones, but it can be irregular to some
it
degree.
can be irregular, yeah.
And I just think this particular intersection, and it is a major intersection, so that was the view anyway about those village centers, that they would be more intensive. I don't know, I think, sorry, I'm just trying to.
No, you're working through it.
And, that's not my first choice, but maybe this is
There
okay.
are, the other side of the street, there is an edge which is zoned completely, actually, it's zoned strangely right now. We're not sure if it's IL or RDB.
it's IL, but the
It's
color
IL.
looks like RDC.
Yeah, well,
The way it's currently zoned actually is the best for this particular location because it's half of the lot, right? Half of it can be
Well, it's the
commercial. and the other-
entirety of one lot, and as, the entirety of where the house is, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, the entirety of the house is
Yes,
in the
and about
GBD.
1,000 feet or so goes into the other parcel that is also GBD2.
Right.
Yeah, because of the curvature of the street, as Janine had explained.
See the triangle of,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, July vision isn't great if you can have it. Please, 'cause I'm sorry.
forgive me,
Please.
go up a little bit.
Oh, that's why I couldn't tell you, because this is the
Right.
rezone, but yeah, I can't go up, that's why.
Right.
Yeah, so.
So there is a-
Here, this is much better. So-
There we go. So this
the whole-
is 1445 with the pink and blue, the triangle of pink, and that is the garden lot.
Right.
right.
And then the whole house is
And
there.
the house is commercial, and you can see it's commercial all around, across the street
You know your
is,
Yeah.
so, sorry, you're looking at my finger. Right, so this is the undeveloped lot, this is the house lot.
Yep.
The house lot looks out at the alley here, which is quite unattractive, the Winchester Optical,
Where they-
and the glowing pizza
Yeah.
sign.
Yep.
Well, good. So, anyway, I would, so, again, I'm more sympathetic to the original presentation. Now, maybe I'll lose all my newfound friends here, but I do think that I would keep this as residential, so it is.
So but you don't, you mean keep this as commercial and make this whole parcel residential? Or what, or you're just saying keep it, everything the way it is currently?
Well, as we're doing these conversions, that I would do the conversion there.
Right, so my point was that if we're gonna do
Oh, I guess it
this
doesn't
one,
matter,
then why wouldn't we be doing the
Right,
whole
right, right.
length of
Oh, I
them?
see.
So, and that's why I was like, I would rather not put it forward if we were gonna think about,
I would agree.
yeah.
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah, it's therein lies the rub, and I don't know.
Am I allowed to speak at all during this?
No, sorry, no.
Okay, so there is a
Excuse
rationale
me, the
for,
public hearing is over.
okay,
Right, well,
this is different.
I have to say, I mean, I don't think that, honestly, I don't feel like we're really doing this discussion justice, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm hearing this, that, and the other thing, and, you know, I'm not, at least in my head, it's not coming at me terribly coherently.
Well,
So,
let me-
unless somebody would like to.
Okay, the one coherent thing that I trust you can process at almost 10 o'clock at night is that if nothing moves forward, you're going to see you're going to see some damage in the next year or two before we come back. And,
Well, we can come back, though, in the spring.
But as Deb says, I think we now know what the issues are. Is there, in terms of the boundaries, that's really what's being debated here. And
Well-
is there any new information that would come forward?
Well, what the, one of the people in the hearing noted was that on Water Street, they would rather see us look at the zoning and reduce the by right heights and create some setbacks
You would have
at
to
this
do it
point.
in GBD three.
Yeah, and bring that to spring town meeting versus looking at the rezoning. So we put in the language that we have in the CBD into this zoning of that you have to step back into the if you're gonna build into the residential.
So,
But you're still, I mean,
go ahead.
you're still gonna see wraparound into the side streets.
And I think we're gonna have to actually end up doing that to get viable projects. And that's what the analysis is gonna happen and help us know more of because of,
I think what you're gonna find is that you're gonna get wraparound in all the vulnerable areas,
Right.
that there are parcels on Main Street which could be developed, which have larger areas that currently aren't developed. There's a ton of projects that could be made on the other side of Main Street, which have very large parcels, and they're just single-story buildings. And on those ones, I don't know why they're not developed. They're
Well,
just,
by the way, one reason is some of them, I mean, I'll name names, the cleaners, the hamburger place and so on, they're profitable as they are. So, but over time,
Dangerous.
they will flip, but it'll just take some time. When you're running a going business, you don't, I mean, I can name lots of examples in the center too, where the land may ultimately be worth more, but and there's a higher and better use, but just if you got your business and that's been your livelihood for a zillion years, you're not going to necessarily sell right away. Or even
no,
over
but
10
if
years.
the price is right, you will sell it. I've seen plenty of businesses in Cambridge which were on valuable real estate properties, which just in the last few years, they decided it's much more,
Well, let me go back to Heather's, my question. To me, we will lose Canal Street if we don't go forward.
Yeah, I think that would be unfortunate. Well, it really, because it really provides that residential link.
That'll be a pretty impactful project.
It would, and I'm just thinking about the Lynch School also, which is not.
yeah, that's the problem, is that's the
That's
Lynch
other
School
side.
route.
Exactly.
In fact, all these are Lynch School routes.
And there's no way you feel that we can adjust the boundaries because of that.
we would have to bring in every property owner. I mean, we looked at these and we looked at historical uses. So those properties which were historically used as commercial and are obviously commercial because, for instance, they have trucks parked and all that on there, we retained those. So, I'm not primarily in this to protect Canal Street. I know.
I
I
saw
just
it
want to make
years
another,
ago.
I do
Yeah,
live
no,
on Canal
I saw that
Street.
years ago.
But
And
I'm not,
this was-
what I saw on Richardson made me really concerned
Yeah, no,
because,
I understood this for a long time, and I'm glad that I thought, well, good, finally, we're focusing on a big mess, and it's only getting worse very fast.
What's the height by right?
45.
Which is higher than some places in downtown.
Wow.
well, It's definitely higher than the 40 feet that's in the residential. And that 5 feet gets you the entire third floor.
Well, we can move it forward and still definitely postpone if we
That's true.
choose in the next few weeks.
Or we
before
could,
town meeting.
we could put it before town meeting and
Right.
let town meeting have their
Right,
say.
right. And the neighbors who would want to be for and against and let them speak.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's town meeting's call, I think, and maybe we just let town meeting make the choice if, what they want, and we'll have to do a financial analysis of really the benefit financially to the town, making that, these commercial, and if we built all that, what's the benefit?
Well, the commercial, that was a really important point, and I want to make that clear. I have no reason to think, first of all, that there's that much demand any longer for retail. It just is shrinking despite whatever, if some random person puts in some space, but mostly it's not the market. The market's residential.
I mean, the financial analysis would be for the entire Main Street corridor, which I think is, in my mind, in some ways, is separate from this issue.
Oh, but it's been brought forward, so it's
Yes,
just a question of.
it has been brought
we
forward,
realize that
and
we need more commercial, well, I'm not
and
sure
I think that we do need more commercial, but I also,
Well, no, I don't think it's there.
in my opinion, there's plenty of developable land on Main Street which hasn't been developed, and so it's underdeveloped.
No.
And I would rather, just as we were concerned about opening up parts of the CBD to development where we thought it was sensitive, I think we have the same concern here.
I do.
So, anyway, since I can't make a motion, I have to leave it up to the
Well,
board
I'm
to
going
make
to
a
make a
motion.
motion to move on, put this on the warrant, I guess, as is. This is our last chance in terms of border boundaries. I understand, is that
Yeah.
there's just no change in it?
I mean, this is what we're voting on tonight is what gets put into town meeting
No, that I
unless.
get, but these boundaries you feel are just,
Correct?
Comfortable, yes.
more than comfortable.
Well, the boundaries, we're making it so the boundaries follow the lot lines.
Which I think there's a big deal of merit in that, to be honest with you.
Let's analyze the triangle master plan. I think we give it to town meeting. This is what the triangle master plan, which was given through residents' feedback, what they wanted. I think we go forward with what the residents wanted and let town meeting make the
Most of
call.
the triangle master plan did get, or some of the triangle master plan did get done here, which was taking out the IL parcels and putting them in GBD. That was a very large thing that happened, and that already did happen. That was a major part of it. I don't know how much is left of the triangle master plan along the Main Street corridor, where there's real work to be done according to that plan. So that's something
Which is, I
could
agree
go
with.
to. I think that the bulk of it really was, the big change was changing all those IL parcels, which there was like 6 big ones. There was like the equivalent of like 16 parcels each of these other small ones that they got zoned from IL to GBD3. So I'll look into that to see what else on the triangle master plan wasn't done.
Yeah. The other thing is, this is all bedrock, so when they went to go put all their foundations in on Main,
Oh, yeah.
all of us shook, and all of our houses shook for days and days. And so building of that height in this area is really impactful on our structures.
Some of those points need to be captured, so everybody.
But it's all bedrock right there.
But technically, do we have a motion yet?
Well, I'm making a motion, but it ended in a little
It did,
question
yeah,
mark,
okay.
which was, you don't see adjusting the boundaries. And I'm just concerned.
I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm saying the boundary adjustment that you had mentioned seems unfair to all the other parcels that have the same exact condition.
Well, see, the reason I would say it's not, okay, yeah, we got an opening here, is because of that particular situation, of what's across the street, and it's a major corner, and I would, I guess, just shift the whole boundary up.
You mean just take this and put it here, so this is full residential and this is full GBD3?
Correct.
I'm just trying to understand what you're
Yes,
saying.
That
Okay.
is what I would do.
So your proposal is as is, except
Mm-hmm. Yes.
only 1445 gets
Correct.
fully rezoned.
Correct.
And what, okay.
Correct.
So my concern would be then that the impact of a large building wrapping around is now felt by 3 residential lots, which directly abut it.
Oh, yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, so I would advocate against that change just based on.
We'll put the
impact.
motion forward and then.
Yeah, okay. Let's put that motion
Okay,
forward.
well, I will, so I'm going to need help from Brian, but I guess I'm thinking that, okay, I'll make him. I'm not passionate, so we should feel for phone, and nobody should feel they shouldn't vote against me on this one. I will back off immediately, but I will just see what you guys think, to rezone, help me out, Brian.
Rezone 1445,
45 as,
RG only.
RG only, right, and to adjust,
Keep.
retain 1446 within.
Well, this is the existing zoning,
Right,
so what you would
retain,
say is retain 1446 and rezone 1445 as RG.
Correct.
Okay, so that
Otherwise, I will
is
support
the
this
motion.
rezoning, right, as presented at this hearing.
And 1445 is currently open land,
Correct.
which we had open land, which we kept as residential, or it was a
Or it
parking
can be
lot and we turned it to
residential.
residential.
It can be a house,
It's
or
essentially.
two-family.
No, we came into the other
It's
situation
not big enough
last,
to be a two-family.
our last meeting.
But anyway, it's
In the last meeting, we had discussed the Verizon parcel.
And they had 2 lots like that. We put their parking in residential, and we put their building in commercial.
Well, what we decided to do
Just keep it what it was. and
was
take
if that was split, we would keep it as is.
Which
Which is it is split, so we're not doing anything to
We're
that
not
parcel.
doing
It went from
anything to
40 to 39 parcels because of the Verizon building.
So the Verizon, we kept that way because the Verizon lot goes, what, a couple hundred feet? It went.
More than 150.
Way more than 150.
And what percentage of
Just in terms of impact in the
45
neighborhood.
is commercial right now?
The gentleman said 1,000 square feet.
Yes, yes.
So that's probably around,
That 1,000 square feet of 1445 is this red portion.
and that looks, how big is that lot?
Do you know offhand how big the 1446 is, the garden parcel? I'm gonna say 6,000, if that.
We did the math, it was a little north of
Yeah.
1,000.
No, but the whole parcel, 1445.
And what if we pull 1445 and 46 out of the rezone period?
Yes, hold on, I do. Hold on, bear with me, I just have to go through all my meeting.
Then just keeping it with a portion in and
Yeah.
portion out.
It's owned,
And we have to do that for all the rest.
it's owned by the same person.
And also, I guess my logic, I did hit a rationale, which is that I do believe 14, whatever, whatever, hearing optical, whatever it's called today. But I really, Winchester, I actually think it'll get redeveloped someday with a bigger development is there existing, and I don't think, and actually what I think is gonna happen there, it's gonna be an apartment building, a condo building. I just think that if it's.
This is a lot survey, would you like to look at it? You
We just want to know the square footage. What's the square footage
I'll
of
just let you look at it.
45?
That's my survey.
That's,
There is a world like in Somerville where they spend a ton of money in planning, and they do form-based code, and they actually look at what's on the ground, and what you can visualize, and to me, I can see that here.
Let's just come back to
I just take a look at that.
getting this done, and motion. So.
You can't turn both the commercial.
I really feel that we had a rationale by which we looked at these properties, we looked at them by these uniform, what we felt were uniform criteria, and if at this point we start cherry picking which ones stay and which ones go, then the whole concept of trying these
So it
things
disappears.
disappears. And so I don't think that's fair to the neighbors who have already left. I don't think it's fair to the neighbors who weren't here, and certainly the property owners who weren't here couldn't speak for themselves. They would want to have their parcels removed as well, so.
Well, let's go with that.
It's 1423. Can I see
Here's a
14?
question, I've had, seen at this table, where we've had motions going as well, I guess I would call it as the wrong order. And we end up with nothing, where there's some desire to do something, and so if I put forward that, and if it's defeated, we may want to entertain another motion, so,
Sure.
I'm willing to, I think, not willing, I just would, I think the logic would be to get the best outcome here. Is to start with yours and see if everybody wants to go forward with it, and then back off and see if there are alternatives. So we could do, because I think we collectively do feel we want to do something.
Okay.
So that's my sense of the group.
So,
It's behind the dairy barn.
Yeah.
So I think the first approach would be to take the position, support the original presentation as is here. And so I'll make that motion, let's see what happens. You need a second. So now discuss, anybody?
We're voting on,
we're
The
voting
original.
on the.
As
language
is.
As written in front of us.
okay.
And there are a motion and a second are on the table. Do we need further discussion?
This is what's behind that house.
I think we've discussed.
Okay, and so, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, so it passes 4-0.
Cool.
And thank you for your effort, and now it goes to town meeting where you'll have yet another chance. And where you go. Thanks for that.
Article 15,
And so, we really need to do minutes. And
I
so,
brought mine.
in particular, we
I'm
have-
sorry, we brought up the survey,
it's here.
her copy? Ah, thank you.
There you go.
So,
Thank you very much.
in particular, I don't know if we have hard copies of the two from Liz that she sent out. Because we really should have hard copies for that, although I certainly would if we're getting to this budget conversation. I don't think we're getting to the budget tonight, because,
No, those days, I don't think,
Oh, you have the three, that's just the budget, but it's on the front.
Caffeine. Okay, we have to do these though, because we have to get these on the warrant article. We have to finish these.
oh, that's right, we still have a couple to go. I'm sorry.
I thought, yes. we
I'm
did.
sorry, I'm just so
Okay.
Okay, so we are done
So
with
Article
Article
15 is Article 15.
Yes, we're done with 14.
We're done with 14. Article 15 is Highland.
Folks, could you, peanut gallery out there, could you move your conversations into the corridor, please? Thank you very much.
the article, just call it, let's vote on it.
Okay, Article 15, this is to rezone Highland property off of Highland Ave.
You're gonna make a motion to approve this, move it forward to the town meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So that's 4-0.
Brian, can you please make sure it's clear that what we choose to do with parcel C is still,
Very much up in the air.
it's not up, it's, I mean, you keep saying two-family, but given the reaction to Doug Marmon's conversation at our last town meeting, there's a tremendous amount of town meeting that wants to keep C as conservation land. Treat it as conservation land, not zone it as conservation land. So the real big thing is that the town is getting C. And what we do with C is, I know there are some select board members who would like to develop C. I am not in favor actually of developing C. Land is so hard to come by right now.
Yes, and that is so close by the rest of the.
So, for your presentation, those are my
Yeah,
comments.
And, you know, the town is giving up A and B
To get the conservation land,
to get C.
which I see
So
as.
the question is, it's a trade-off, right?
Right, it's
This is a
clearly not
very-
one for one.
It's not one for one.
We're also getting 50% of the cost of the drainage. That's pretty much the only thing we're getting out of this is avoiding the only thing we're getting out of this Highland Ave deal, let's be very clear, is avoiding a 40B and half the cost of the drainage work, which is not much, but it's
And-
avoiding a
But
40B. That
let's-
is what's happening.
Well, let's also remember that we still haven't seen the final subdivision plans.
Yeah.
We know
haven't
there are
submitted.
problems, we know there are
We
problems.
can talk about how this gets so
Yes,
sensitive.
but
we're nowhere with
I just
that.
want to let people out there in TV land know that there are still problems with the slope or the grade of the road. So there is no guarantee the subdivision plan will make it through this board. So there are a lot of unknowns. So all we're talking about is rezoning.
Right.
Onward.
Okay, onward.
Okay, 16.
Article 16. So Article 16, we had several comments
Oh, I
saying
thought
that
this was fine. The only major comment was about cost of appeal. Honestly, going for a site plan
Well,
review isn't it?
No, I mean, I didn't have, I will also miss this conversation. I didn't agree that this was that much more burdensome.
Right.
I just kind of believed that although, so the numbers that we have for site plan review right now, 3,600, 5,000, 6,000, they seem to be working in the fact that, meaning that, I'm pretty sure builders are specifically looking at that, and
They're doing a nice job.
it is changing what they're doing. I think it's a positive thing.
It's a good thing, yeah.
The only reservation, only because you haven't heard any of my reservations about this one, and I told Diab last week, was that the 12 to 1,600 square foot small structures, you're essentially going to make them, or let's say 1,200 square feet, because they do exist. And I kind of feel for those houses that they want to go from 1,200 to 2,000, and they can't even go to 2,000 without a site plan review. I find that to be too restrictive.
Yeah. I can understand.
I should let you finish before.
I was done. It's the only reservation I have here is for the really small houses that just want to put a large addition on, but still not reaching the 36.
Right.
Right, so
Basically, I believe in the current site plan review triggers.
I think my concern is that we have neighborhoods of smaller houses where
They're on top of each other.
where if you allow, and I've seen it, it's on Middlesex, and I wish I had brought a picture where a small house was removed and it was built out as much as it could.
Talking about that one.
And it's much larger than it has really changed the character of the neighborhood. And I do agree that people should be able to expand their homes. If a person is going to expand their home, I don't know that, I don't think that this is a huge impediment.
That's what I think.
And that's, I guess, where I'm coming down on. I mean, I think that it's not a huge impediment. Yes, it does introduce some delay. It introduces some review, but I think that in the long run, it's a benefit. So.
Was the one on Middlesex? It was in what zone? I can't remember what zone it was in. It is in RG. And it didn't, but it.
We're on board.
No, but it didn't hit 3,600.
No, I don't think so. We didn't see a site plan.
No, I know we didn't. I'm just.
It was built to fit in with everything to avoid site plan, but since you can still build.
I mean, 3,600 is a big house.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I mean, I have a
for a small house, for a small lot, it's a big house. There's no doubt.
Well, even so, I have a 3,000 square foot house and I have 6 bedrooms, 3 full baths. So like, I mean, I mean.
It doesn't look that big from the front.
Well, yeah, but some.
But I had a question about the 50%. Is 50% the right? Should it be more like 75%? So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to grab the houses that are changing in scale so dramatically
Yeah.
that they're causing huge
It's changing
impact.
on scale also because
So we're talking about
it's
1 and a
changing
quarter,
way.
1 and a half, right? Versus 1 3/4 or 1 and a half. Is that,
Honestly, to be fair, the number was picked.
The number was picked.
It was not, just that, it was saying, well, that seems reasonable. Not, I mean, a lot of the time that works. I'm just saying that there wasn't, whereas when we looked at the 3,600, 5,000, 6,000, we actually looked at all of the new construction in the past year. We didn't go back 10 years, but we looked in the past year, generally what's happening in these areas. And we found out, okay, well, we want to capture the duplexes. What's the number that would need to be,
Do that.
and
You want to do any more research? We can approve this and it can be amended because there's some.
well, what, I was actually, this number 6, right? So your 4 is 50%, 5 is 50%, maybe in 6 for the 3,600. or an increase of floor area of
75?
75%. Because those, 3,600 is their trigger, and if they're going, just falling underneath it,
Well, let's actually, because my brain can't work.
do the
Let's-
math.
Yeah, it's much easier to do 50% in your head.
Because I
Yes,
mean,
that's why.
50% on a 3,000 square foot home is different than,
So let's say that you start out with a 1,500 square foot home.
okay.
And if we give them 75%, you end up with a 2,600 square foot home.
Yeah,
So if they start with the 2,000, that obviously gets you up to
It's
3,500.
another 1,250.
So that gets you 2,000. I just
It's
can't.
another 1,250. 3,250.
so they just fall under the 3,600.
Yeah.
You get 3,500. Yeah.
That's big, if it's a bunch of, because you have to
Yeah.
assume that all the houses were built at one scale,
Right.
like Middlesex.
I mean,
I think.
here's my take on this. We know that we come back and adjust things.
Mhm.
So if it turns out 50% is a really big net, then we consider making it higher.
Yeah,
I'm worried about,
the Middlesex example.
I'm worried about, I mean, this is one step to trying to
Mhm.
maintain our stock of smaller homes.
It actually is a good step, and
It is.
most of those smaller homes that are in the 1,200 are on very tight lots with each other, and they're usually non-conforming to begin with.
Right, so.
Otherwise, they would have had the additions already put on.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is the 50% was, no research was gone into it. I was just thinking, if you have a small lot and you have a 1,500 square foot house, what would be appropriate? I was basing it on that. Because I knew that, as you go to larger lots, you can, the percentages grow dramatically.
Right.
And so I had in the original setup, I had a table where
Yeah,
you could have put
Right,
separate numbers
so
for
it
each
has-
one.
I remember that.
And so I was thinking that maybe we would eventually redo it for the larger lots, because we had talked about things like that. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking.
I would make a motion to approve, or move this to warrant.
For a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Let's go
pulling your calculator out.
Straight to the minutes.
Let's go straight.
And then I'm guessing we're.
What minutes are there?
We have.
We have a very important one, because there's a public records request
Okay.
of of the attorney for Ms. Pierce, for everything, all of the minutes from our previous meeting, so we need to approve them so that we can give them to her. We didn't want to give them draft minutes.
Okay.
That'd be bad. But we
I'm
should-
going
we
to
should-
have to say I haven't read them. I mean, I skimmed them on my computer, but
I've read them.
I guess I'll let them just move forward.
The only thing I can say is we need to approve this tonight, so either
We do
you
that.
can read them, or,
Well, I have
I
one.
read that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move them. I had to skim them, so let's just move them forward.
Well, let's, okay, we'll do one at a
Which
time.
one?
Okay, let's do.
yeah, you have to let Liz know which
I don't
minutes
have
we're,
them, so.
we're looking at. I just
We
passed
got-
them
We
out.
just got them in your packet. right?
August 21st.
What packet? I didn't get a packet.
The one that came
And
with
just,
this.
here it is. It's,
Oh, okay. Oh.
Okay, so we're discussing the minutes of, sorry, close to my mic,
August 21st.
August 21st.
I'm gonna move for favorable action, approve the minutes as presented.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
That's August 21st.
It's August 21st, 4-0. And our next minutes are September the 11th, 2018.
Perfect, I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What about the ones that didn't get done at last meeting?
We can do those.
That was September 11th.
No,
No.
no, no,
The
no,
minutes
no.
that were
May-
We have those in front of us.
I did read those.
I think we can just go through those right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So why don't we do those in calendar order, or whatever it's called?
Some of them I
You know,
have to
so-
recuse myself at, but I don't know which ones.
Okay, so Thursday, May 10th.
No amendments for me, so I would move, approve them.
And so we have a motion on the floor, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that's, what was that?
May 10th.
May 10th is for naught. Okay, our next one is Tuesday, May the 22nd.
These are edits because it's David's story garden and so on. I don't think you guys need to hear all this, but anyway, I would
Yes, and I
I would
have,
call them.
and I have one
approve
to
it as
immediate corrections.
amended.
So is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second. I'll give these to you, Liz. Thank you.
And we'll take 1 second for Heather to see what her action will be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And so that's 4-0 on
May 22nd.
May 22nd, and then on Tuesday, June 12th.
So I actually had one amendment, I just want to read more, as much for board's information as anything. On page 2, it was noted that if Winchester wanted to obtain CBG, sort of whatever that is, community block grants, in CPA funding, it would need to be approved at town meeting, period, okay. And then I changed it to an article for CPA funding was presented at town meeting, which voted to put it before the voters, but they did not support it, because that's actually what happened, it went before the community, so we.
What did?
CPA.
CPA, yeah.
Oh, okay, you're clarifying the CPA stuff.
Yeah, okay, so
I'm
that's
getting-
the second paragraph.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I want to make one appeal to the board. Brian and I will be working on the background for the articles tomorrow. They need to be in by Friday, so. in
And
particular-
that's a hard deadline.
It's a hard deadline.
Yeah.
So if you have language that you want to make sure gets into the background material, I'm looking at you, Heather.
I gave it all.
The dormer stuff.
Okay.
I gave you more than that.
Okay.
Recommendations throughout this entire conversation. I've been giving you
Oh,
recommendations.
I thought you, well, yeah.
We're looking for background material.
Oh, back, okay.
We have to write.
I
the
gave him,
background.
I gave it to him already. He has the background stuff for the dormers.
Yes. That's
Okay.
the only thing she gave me in terms of background.
Okay.
That's what you're talking about.
I just wanted to make sure that, that was okay.
My sketches have been submitted.
Okay, then that's excellent. So if you have any other things you want to get in
I
there.
am curious, is there like a 1 sentence, 2 sentence, the headline only, as you said, Elmwood,
Okay, right, so, Elmwood.
That's also in your packet there's an email. At the
There's-
very, very back of your packet that there should be an email exchange from the applicant.
I've got a new screen.
It's not in here.
Yeah, we didn't get it.
It's okay, just
Okay,
give us
here's the 1
gist.
second thing. So, the concern was whether or not the current owner of the Elmwood Avenue property still had a viable special permit.
Right.
And the question was, had they done significant work on the property? And so what we have, and this was, so what we have is a description of what they did. And they apparently did significant amount of engineering work in order to put in this the secant pile foundation, which is apparently the bee's knees.
Well, it's standard in urban development if you're near other buildings. The reason why is because there's that rear wall, if you remember. There's a very tall wall there, and
I've
the
seen
developer who
this.
took
I've
this
been watching
over
this project.
was extremely responsible in the fact that he didn't just want to ignore that thing and hope it goes away. He's actually building a responsible building.
So I think that from
Previous
this
builder didn't do it.
response, and since they already have the permit and they have pretty much put a whole chunk of concrete in the ground, I think that they have done substantial work on the project, although it wasn't seen on the ground. But certainly the engineering was done. And the reason why there was a delay as to actually getting their work started is, I think it's in here somewhere that there was special equipment.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's,
we
it's,
got it.
it's, it abides by the law.
I think we're good on Elmwood. And this is- Okay, so,
What else? The
So,
budget?
The budget we can't do tonight, it's just too late.
Is there an issue with the budget?
No, but no issue, we're supposed to do it
We
every
do
month.
have to vote it.
And we do actually have to come up with a budget for
Yeah, for next year.
That's the
December.
big one.
For the override?
No, well,
That was my other question, since the budget is on the agenda. The override, I am under the impression that there are 3 different prices, values going into the committee that's working on it.
there are 3 different scenarios.
Yes. Are we providing numbers for all 3 of those scenarios?
There's one scenario which is
Boots and straps.
boots, no override, and we have not been asked, as far as I know, the planning board has not been asked directly.
I thought we were asked directly.
No. The direct ask would have come, to the planning department, the direct ask probably would have come from Richard Howard. I mean, certainly you passed on, I asked so that we could pass it on to Lance.
And Lance told us not to, but it's my understanding that Mariano is taking the
Lance told us
lead.
not to.
He's,
I've certainly passed on a recommendation to Lance. I know that you have as well.
and I don't think it got passed on to the committee that meets on Thursday. Are you
He's on
attending
the
that?
committee as well.
I missed, I think I missed, I'm going to be there this Thursday morning, so I will,
Okay, I think I'll try to get
I mean, I could be there.
right.
I will try to be there too, because I think it's very important that the planning board's budget and that, because we have been like holding back on a town planner, and we need that included if they are gonna go for the override to bring us back to,
I've
We
submitted
have to-
that particular, Brian did, he did the background of the research on how much it would cost. So we have an actual number. Maureen suggested an increase to our consulting budget, which I put in. So,
and then a 10-year projection on it is really what they need.
well, I think they can simply take that and do a 10-year projection.
They can do it, but that's what they have to do on it too.
Right, so this Thursday at 8:30 in the AM, Zoom in this room, the State of the Town Finance Committee will be meeting. So, by all means, show up. Coffee and donuts are not provided.
Are they ever? For us, they're never for
I
us.
don't need the donuts, I just need
We
the coffee.
have a motion to adjourn. Is
I make a
there
motion to
second?
adjourn, second.
All in favor?
Aye.